Hello and welcome to fSobriety. I am Craig Woods, the procrastinator, guzzler of Argentine Cabernet, annihilator of Chilean Malbec, raider of the 7 finest wine regions of Latin America.
I'm James Hamilton, and I may be a shitty asshole, but I'm the greatest shitty asshole there is.
I'm Alan Todd, and your fucking shit is fucking cool. My fucking shit is fucking shit.
And we have convened here today to talk Doom Patrol Season 3. Guys, it's here. It's finally back with us.
It's here.
Hooray!
Live Doom Patrol.
Yeah, so for previous listeners to our podcast will know that we've done a couple of Doom Patrol specials in the past, but the first 2 seasons of Doom Patrol were broadcast before we started podcasting. So this is the first time we've actually been podcasting while it's been on air, so that's crazy.
Yeah.
To think you people listening were actually alive at this moment in time. Do you know what I mean? Like, this particular juncture of history. It's amazing.
What a time to be alive.
Lucky people.
A live patrol. We launched our podcast basically on the back of 3 television shows, Mr. Robot, Twin Peaks, and Doom Patrol being our, triumvirate, and now we're all over Doom Patrol, and I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, I think when we first, in the previous times we've talked about this show on the podcast, we kind of said one of the big things about it is when it comes back, certainly when it came back last year, amidst all the chaos of COVID, not that we're out of that, but when it arrived last year, I remember us saying, it is just like being welcomed back into a big, cosy, dysfunctional family.
If this is your first episode, or have listened to our previous episode about Doom Patrol, and this is your first time joining us for our recap as it goes on, welcome new listeners.
Welcome indeed. Yeah, that's a point actually. I did notice that recently our previous Doom Patrol episodes did get some fresh downloads, so clearly people are on the hunt for that sweet Doom Patrol content, so hopefully the people who did that are listening to this, and indeed welcome. I hope you enjoy the ride.
And also, let me just throw in here real quick, if you're coming to this podcast through me having promoted it on the Doom Patrol subreddit, thank you, because the Doom Patrol subreddit is way nicer than the fucking Twin Peaks subreddit, which is full of cunts.
Are you telling me that fans of Doom Patrol are generally more human than fans of Twin Peaks?
Turns out,
well, that comes as a surprise to absolutely fucking nobody.
The proof is in the difference between the number of upvotes and downvotes that my promotion of the podcast gets on Reddit.
Apologies to any of our Twin Peaks fans listening. We don't mean you. We just mean a contingent of the Twin Peaks fans.
Those Twin Peaks fans.
Yeah, those other ones.
Yeah, the ones in the Reddit room.
I think the other thing to say before we begin is apologies for us being a wee bit late in getting to this, but we have had some behind-the-scenes stuff going on that has just delayed us getting on this. So whenever you might be listening to this, we might be midway through the season by now. I'm not really sure by the time you hear this.
Yep, apologies. Editor here. I am currently in the process of moving house, so...
Yeah, it's been a challenge.
But we will still bring you that hot slice of Doom Patrol recaps that you want. Maybe just slightly after the fact.
Hey, it's still going to be fresh, it's still going to be funny, it's still going to be a joy, we're still going to have fun with it. Doom Patrol is forever, guys.
Forever young.
Oh, don't make me cry already.
We'll come to that later. Save your tears, Craig, save your tears.
Before we dive deep into these first 3 episodes that we were given here at the start of the season, all 3 of which landed on the 23rd of September, I'm just going to come out with my first question to you guys. Why is this the best show ever made?
Well, I mean, we covered this in both our talks about seasons 1 and 2.
We did, yeah.
Any single episode can have like the most excellent lulls in it. It can be hysterically funny while also having incredible human tragedy and pathos. It can be heart-wrenching. It can be horrifying. And all within this within minutes of each
within
other.
A few scenes, yeah.
And it juggles it perfectly. The balance is incredible. Like tonally, the writers of this show, 90% of the time, are absolutely on it. Sometimes it goes off a little bit, but we'll come to that when we talk about the season 3, episode 3. But mostly,
spoiler.
Tonally, the writers spin the plate so well in this.
They do. I think we've made a big deal before about saying just how it defies all odds, because most of the time in other shows when you do combine all those different tones and at such a heightened level, each of them as well, you end up with a show that just falls apart and doesn't, and really loses all sense of its identity. For some weird reason, Doom Patrol never does that. It manages to come away feeling whole and distinctive despite all these, and indeed because of all these madcap things all buzzing around like a hive of bees together.
Mm-hmm. I feel really bad for the folk behind Legion though, because they made this really great show, and we were like, wow, that's great. And then Doom Patrol came along, and you're like, Legion what? Legion who? What?
I think that's a good observation. Doom Patrol definitely stole some of Legion's thunder, because Legion to that point was kind of the most adventurous of all the comic book shows. And it had that slightly gonzo feel about it, but then Doom Patrol came along and went, hold my beer.
Yep, I mean, we have mentioned before, I think, that Legion could have been in the triumvirate if Doom Patrol hadn't been there. And I still think we do need to talk about Legion at some point, because it is an incredible show and I love it, but...
it's definitely worth a rewatch as well.
Alan's hit the nail on the brain inside a robot body. Doom Patrol just absolutely stole its thunder as the crazy comic book show.
Yeah, I mean, I raised the question, why is this the best show ever? Because I'm not necessarily saying it's better than the other two shows that are in our trinity, the aforementioned Twin Peaks and Mr. Robot, but there's just something so endlessly enjoyable. Like, I could watch this show no matter what mood I'm in.
Other than 2 episodes, I'm with you.
Right, yeah. You should reiterate why that is, Alan, because some people might not have listened to our previous episode.
Because Catholicism is weird, Christianity is weird, and
it was actually only 1 episode. It wasn't 2 episodes, but you spent the next episode feeling so freaked out because you were expecting it to come back. But yeah, Alan has a major complex relationship with stigmata imagery, and in the episode Cult Patrol, there's a very brief sequence involving that, and Alan was not pleased.
No, Alan was almost sick.
We won't put a stigmata alert sting in there every time stigmata is mentioned now, though. Wait, like I was planning, because...
Yeah, we'll dump that. Stigmata of the dump.
I was thinking I would call it the stigmata, but, stigmata.
Nice. But yeah, I say all this about the show whilst even having some misgivings about a couple of things we're going to be talking about in this episode. Like, one of these 3 episodes, I'll just foreshadow this, and you sort of intimated it, James, is maybe in fact, there's no maybe, it is my least favourite episode of the show so far. Still love the episode, though.
Yep.
And one of the other episodes also contains one of my biggest bugbear tropes that I really dislike, but it ended up still being a great episode. But yeah, this show just seems to work that kind of magic. Alright, preamble done, let's get into the meat and bones.
Alright.
Season 3, Episode 1, Possibilities Patrol. It's a beautiful a cappella version, absolutely flawless. That will definitely get us a copyright strike on YouTube because it was so flawlessly reproduced.
That was the Flying Pickets remix.
Apologies to Clint Mansell and Kevin Kiner.
We flying picketed the hell out of that shit. So good.
I don't know. I feel like our version of the Mr. Robot theme a cappella works better than the Doom Patrol would, but
strangely, I agree.
We'll work on the Doom Patrol one.
This definitely needs smoothed out.
By the end of season 3, we'll have it nailed.
That was the Cliff Steele quality version. We're going to try and work it towards more of a Vic Stone quality version. So this episode was directed by Dermot Downes. Dermot Downes previously directed Donkey Patrol,
nice.
Which of course was the 2nd episode of the entire series. He also directed Danny Patrol, where we were first introduced to Danny the Street, and Ezekiel Patrol, which was of course the season finale of the 1st season.
He's done some quality work.
He certainly has. He's done some standout entries in the Doom Patrol catalogue. Of course, when I say season 3, episode 1, I personally call this Season 2, episode 10.
Yep. This was 100% the season 2 finale.
Yeah.
It was the finale
So
that we missed because of COVID.
It was written by Tamara Becker-Wilkinson, Eric Dietel, and Shoshana Sachi. Eric Dietel, incidentally, one of the writers, I only realised this recently as I was rewatching season 2 in preparation for this. Town where the fun fair is towards the end of season 2 is called Dietel, named after him, clearly.
Ah.
Did you notice in the opening credits now that Riley Shanahan and Matthew Zuck now have starring credits, which I think is quite cool.
Ah, nice. I didn't actually pick up on that, but
never noticed.
It's good that they get their physical
They're
appearance
getting their
starring
due.
roles.
So
Yeah.
Riley Shanahan is the body of Cliff Steele, and Matthew Zuck plays the physical Larry Traynor on screen. So yeah, it's kind of weird to remind yourself of that sometimes because you get so wrapped up in the voices of Brendan Fraser and Matt Bomer that you sort of forget they're not really there on screen. Let's cut to it. We got basically the end to the Candlemaker storyline, ... or did we, question mark?
Yeah.
Okay, I have a number of things to say about this. I think I said before on this podcast when we were discussing season 2, I prefer Grant Morrison's version of the Candlemaker over what they've done in the show, but I think what they did in the show absolutely works. I mean, I love what they've done with the Candlemaker in the show, but it's very, very different to what Grant Morrison's original vision of this character. In Grant Morrison's version, the Candlemaker was a kind of egregore. Like, it was just like a psychic phenomenon that basically just became the embodiment of like bad ideas floating around in human consciousness, and it was like kind of evocative of the fear of nuclear Armageddon and stuff like that. Whereas in the show, it is pretty much just another one of Dorothy's imaginary friends, except that there seems to be the suggestion that she has been cursed or laden with it for some reason, and that comes from her people, her mother's people. We've not had the explanation of what any of that means. Are we ever going to get that explanation, do you think?
I don't think we will. Unless Doom Patrol goes for like 7 seasons and they come back to it.
Yeah, it's a weird one because I actually really love the way this episode plays out in terms of how it does wrap up the Candlemaker thing, because ultimately what this episode shows us is we got the showdown in season 2 episode 9. The showdown was when the characters faced their imaginary pals.
And they all
That
lost.
was the showdown. And that was so Doom Patrol, because that's what Doom Patrol does. It does not give us the traditional superhero versus supervillain battle. It's never going to give us that. I mean, the closest we ever got to it was in season 1, and even then it unfolded in such a madcap fashion by proxy of those giant animals making out towards the end of the episode. You know, it's always going to find a more inventive way of doing stuff, and it's always going to some extent kind of undercut the idea that these characters are even superheroes. In fact, that's something that becomes writ large in the next episode in the dialogue itself.
Not a super team.
Right, exactly. So I quite enjoyed, in that sense, how the Candlemaker story was wrapped up. Did you interpret, as I did, that when Dorothy took the Candlemaker away and then came back, that time seemed to have passed at a greater speed for her? Or she'd experienced more time?
Yeah.
Because she comes back looking different.
She comes back looking different. She comes back definitely more mature. I don't know if that was just because of her reaching puberty. Because does she take him to the moon? It looked like the moon.
It was exactly the same backdrop as the moon
Yeah.
from season 2, yeah.
And I got the impression that time had passed.
Yeah, that was kind of my interpretation. She does actually say in a couple of episodes' time when she's talking to the dead boy detective's pal Crystal, that I'm not used to talking to other teenage girls, suggesting she's now a teenager. But in season 2, she was, only 11.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I do feel like they're implying that time has passed for her in a way that it didn't pass for the other characters.
I feel like probably more time passed than we assume for the characters, though, because the fact that, when Cliff returns and Clara's having a baby.
Oh, true,
You
yeah.
know.
But she was already
She was
pregnant.
pregnant, but I
two.
assumed that there was an acceleration there in some way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I loved the way that resolved. I loved that Dorothy just took the Candlemaker to quote unquote the moon or whatever, and was just like, okay, fuck you, you're in my head. We're not leaving until we sort this out. And I was like, oh,
Yeah,
Dorothy
it was
stepped
sweet.
up.
Yeah, it was great. Dorothy's so good.
Yeah, so much of season 2 was Dorothy's struggle with, like, not to go all Brittany here, but not a girl, not yet a woman, and being kind of held back.
I was like, she did it again? What?
She just like steps into season 3 as this more mature, more rounded character, and the arc totally works for me, and I loved it.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, she's definitely much more in charge this season, much more confident. Yeah, it's a cool transition. I'm really enjoying it. I love what the actress brings to this role. Incidentally, by the way, have you noticed that she has changed her stage name? She's now known as Abby Monterey. Previously, she was known as Abigail Shapiro. She has changed her name, I assume, because...
So she's not getting mixed up with Henry's sister, yes.
Yeah, Ben Shapiro's sister, whose name is also Abigail. I actually meant to mention that in the podcast before when we were talking about season 2, that when I was Googling her, it just kept coming up with Ben Shapiro's sister. I was like, well, this is awkward.
Yeah.
So, it looks like she's changed her name for that reason.
She did not want to be associated with the sister of a man who has definitely never sexually satisfied his wife.
Some dry-ass P-word.
Well, what part of the body even is the ass pussy?
Uncooked macaroni in the pot.
But yeah, I actually saw some people online after this episode aired who were complaining a wee bit that they didn't get the big epic showdown they were expecting. And I have to say to these people, are you sure we're watching the same show?
Do you even Doom Patrol, bro?
Right, exactly. Yeah, I guess it's natural if you are used to watching superhero shows, and obviously Doom Patrol is a DC property. On some level, you're always like, maybe in the back of your mind, going, oh, maybe they're going to do it. Maybe they're going to give us that big superhero versus supervillain showdown. This show is just never going to do that, and even if it does, it's going to do it in a way that concentrates way more on the humanity of the characters than any like kind of fetishization of the action itself. It's never going to
imagine that the people you're talking about here had the exact opposite reaction that you and me had to WandaVision, where like the first 7 or so episodes we were like, this is fucking amazing, and then the last episodes you're like, what the fuck, like really?
Yeah,
they were sitting there for 7 episodes going, this is fucking garbage, man. Oh yes, CGI slugfest.
Yeah.
Get her, Wanda.
I luckily fall in a weird, like very thin channel where I'm both. We'll come to that at the end of the year.
Oh, is that going to... Is this a spoiler? Is that making it into your list, I think?
Craig can abuse me because it's pretty fucking high in my TV list.
I think if the first... How many episodes were in that show?
I think about episode 7 you were like, wait a minute.
Yeah, I think first 7 episodes or so, if that was a different show, then that would probably be in my end of year list. But I was not cool with the final couple of episodes. But if people can go back and listen to me rant about that all they like.
The episode in question is called Social Disticuffs, if you're looking for it.
If you want me to gnaw your ears off about why that show you like isn't good. Actually don't do that, because I want you to continue to listen to this.
Yeah. However, having said that, I feel like maybe season 3 of Doom Patrol, one of two things I can see this season going. They're either gonna continue the slow pace towards Doom Patrol becoming an actual functioning team who might be able to take on a supervillain, or this season is them going, no, in case you've not got it by now, they're fucking rubbish.
I suspect there is going to be a wee bit more of a push to them being more cohesive as a team, but they're never going to be... I think sometimes people forget as well, or maybe, there's people who maybe aren't familiar with the comics and just don't know this, but Doom Patrol in the comics, certainly up to a certain era, and I'll throw in the caveat that I've not read any Doom Patrol since about the early mid-90s, but they never were like a fully blown super team in the same way. I mean, they were never the Teen Titans, they were never the Justice League, certainly. Yeah. They were never anything like that. They were always very, very off to the side, dealing with the much smaller, much weirder phenomena in the DC universe. They were very much in a kind of ghetto of their own. Mm-hmm. That was always part of the appeal of Doom Patrol, and it was always something that was very much to the forefront. Like, that was almost a mission statement,
Yeah.
So I can see it gradually cohering into something that does see them being a bit more unified and sort of forward-thinking and proactive as being a team that fights against or for certain things. But you're never going to see them, reach the sort of echelons as the Titans.
They're never going to be the original Doom Patrol.
No, right, exactly. Yeah. Aye. Actually, interesting note here, sort of related to that. Well, I tell you what, let's just talk first about the fact... Okay, guys, Niles Caulder.
Press F.
Press F for Niles Caulder.
Press F for fuck that guy.
Well, yeah, so much more to say about that. Well, I'll ask you guys first, were you surprised that Niles was dead?
Absolutely. Doom Patrol without Timothy Dalton, without our steely-eyed beauty, without the man crush of
velvety
her,
voiced
of her
fuck.
hearts. Yeah. And I was like, oh shit, no, he's actually dead. Cool.
I was and I wasn't, because I knew that season 2 had been channeling a lot of stuff very specifically from the later part of Grant Morrison's run. And in that part of Grant Morrison's run, the Chief does die. And he is beheaded, incidentally.
Yeah.
And so, as we were watching season 2, I remember thinking that as a possibility that could happen. TLDR, spoiler for Grant Morrison's run, the Candlemaker kills Niles in the comics. Although, further spoiler, he sort of kills himself, but it's complicated. But he is beheaded in the comics. And I'll have more to say about that as we go on in a second. So I was not surprised that he died, actually. I was fully on board for thinking they're going to appear to kill Niles and he will be, all intents and purposes, dead, but they'll find a way to keep him around, either in flashbacks or as some kind of supernatural presence. And they did sort of do the supernatural presence, albeit only for this one episode so far. How they're going to deal with that from here on in, we'll see how it goes. But when I saw that he was dead, I was like, oh shit. And there was that moment, it was like they didn't immediately reveal that he was dead, just that he was lying motionless. I always think to myself, oh no, they've killed him. They've actually done it. They've actually killed Niles. So yeah, I'm a wee bit sad that Timothy Dalton's name no longer appears in the opening credits. Makes me sad.
Yeah. Like, more Timothy Dalton's always a good thing, like, no question.
Big man crush for the Dalton over here.
Yep.
Freeze, you bloody bastards!
Greatest line in cinema history. Flash Gordon, 1981. So yeah, there's a lot going on here that actually mirrors that particular era of the comics. Like, this actually reminds me a lot of the way in which the latter part of Grant Morrison's run segued into the start of Rachel Pollack's run. And a lot of the stuff it's mining here story-wise is kind of what was going on there. Not exactly, because as we've discussed before, this show does sort of remix and repackage the ideas from the comics and spins it for its own purposes. But there's a lot going on here that is sort of lifted from that particular era.
Right. Yeah, previously they all had, in season 1, their begrudging respect / admiration for the Chief that bound them together. In season 2, it was their sort of mutual hatred and distrust of the
animosity,
Chief
fuck that guy,
that bound them together. So when you take the Chief out of the equation, it is incredible to watch them as a group spiral in like different directions.
Yeah, and I was going to come to this, and we will talk about it a bit more, but might as well just insert this here. This is one of the things I think is amazing about this show generally, and we did talk about it before. I think we see it really being investigated in a much fresher way here because of the loss of the Chief. Mm-hmm. There is that complicated way. Well, the show has always been great at taking these uber zany characters and doing all kinds of crazy humorous shit with them, but at the same time you still have this very embedded in there is this very, I don't want to use the word serious, but there's a very sincere exploration of psychological trauma, emotional trauma, and how these things are passed down from generation to generation. And Niles being kind of the father figure of the Doom Patrol, there is that kind of metaphor running through the whole show. Mm-hmm. And it seems to be one of the things they're dealing with this season is how people deal with the death of someone who has been both a guardian and an abuser in their life. And that's a really weighty subject. Mm-hmm. And it's the kind of subject that in a much more serious drama is a really dicey thing to do, because there's all sorts of ways that it can become really uninteresting to watch. Like, the idea might be interesting, but turning it into drama makes it a bit staid, makes it a bit sort of empty.
But let's be honest, just downright maybe just too fucking depressing to watch.
Right, that as well.
Yeah.
And that's something this show never is. And it's incredible that this show is still doing all its crazy, funny, zany stuff, and it does still have that level where it is a very truthful exploration of those kind of themes.
Mm-hmm.
The zany part of it, like, I think Brendan Fraser has to get a lot of credit for just how fucking good he is at saying the word fuck. Like, it's uncanny just how good he can, like, take
what the
this
fuck?
awful situation and just say, are you fucking kidding me? What the fucking fuck? And you're like, yep, right, we're back in the laugh zone.
But these 3 episodes themselves, there was just so much content in these 3 episodes of just watching these characters really struggling to navigate their own feelings in terms of, part of me is like, fuck that guy, but part of me is also sad that he's gone, and how do I reconcile these two things?
Yep.
And there is that thing, if somebody's abused you and you feel sad about them being dead, there's also that thing that's kind of self-recriminating in your own mind. You're like, why are you feeling sad about this? Why are you betraying yourself like this? Yeah. And this show is doing a great job of exploring that in what is an absolutely ridiculous quasi-superhero show. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, there's elements of Stockholm Syndrome to all of their reactions to his death and stuff as well, where we know and they know that the Chief was an absolutely selfish prick. But at the same time, they're like, but did he care for us? Even in death, he's still fucking with them like that. It's so
right.
Like, I'm thinking in particular of the conversation that Ghost Niles has with Cliff towards the end, and Cliff's response when he tells him that he sent Clara the video.
First of all, the first thing I think of is when Cliff bursts out laughing after Niles said, please help me, and he just starts pissing himself. But yeah, we do get that reveal that I think we'd already guessed in season 2 that it was Niles that sent Clara the video. But that was a great moment though, where Cliff takes that moment to stop taking the piss out of Niles for a second, and he actually says, "Nothing can ever make things right between us, but thanks for doing that."
That was.
It's moments like that, man. And we're like, oh, don't do this to me, Doom Patrol. Don't hurt my heart like this.
Pardon the pun, but that was super powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
It just left me like, this fucking show.
Yeah, and there's so much of that going on in these first few episodes. Another scene, since we're getting there, that's similar is that scene between Larry and Dorothy, where Dorothy is trying to preserve Niles' body with all the frozen bags of peas, which visually is so morbidly funny.
And she's apologising for using all the peas, and Larry's like, it's fine, nobody
eats them anyway. But Larry has that beautiful speech to Dorothy about how he says that, I spent decades trying to figure my own shit out, and it feels like I've still not moved on. There's a real human truth about that, about the way people can just get caught up in their own shit for their entire lives, and your whole life can just zip past you, and it happens to people all the time, and you've not resolved these feelings. And we know Larry's been alive for much longer than most people get to live, and he's still not figured it out. And it's the kind of thing that only a show about a superpowered character who can live that long can deliver that kind of message, Yep. And obviously Dorothy's lived a long time, but she's been a kid for most of her life. So there's all that weird stuff going on, but fundamentally there's still that human truth on the top of it. Larry just saying, you've still got so much life left to live. Don't waste it, trying to figure stuff out too hard. Just find your way to it. It's beautiful, man. And the performances are so great.
Yeah.
And I guess we have to remind ourselves on Larry's case, it's 2 actors giving great performances.
Every time you see Larry connecting with someone, it's just, it's so beautiful, because both actors give incredible performances, and he's such a kind of standoffish, stay back from everything kind of a guy that when he opens up, man, I get all the feels. Yeah,
so Cliff, as you mentioned earlier, he becomes a grandpa. That happens. Clara gives birth, and we get a very excited Cliff, which is fun. So meanwhile, at the other end of the spectrum, we have Rita, who is still involved in her play about the the Cloverton disaster.
Our town.
With her nemesis playing the exaggerated version of Rita. Yeah. So Rita, everything about this is chef's kiss. Yep. April Bowlby, knock her out of the park. When she first gets up on the stage, it just goes, my bees. I was in fucking stitches in there. It's so good. And then the director saying, okay, just get off the stage. And then she starts giving this, what is essentially a monologue, but it's her true thoughts about, and she essentially gives voice to all the things we were talking about, that she feels completely at a loss because she loved Niles and hated him and never told him either of those things, and now it's too late. That broke my fucking heart, man. It was one of many things to break my heart in these episodes. Yeah, man. April fucking Bowlby dropping Isn't She Lovely in here in stereo. Rita continues to be, I think, my favourite Yeah, she's fantastic. Also, when she exits stage left, we get even Doom Patrol cannot resist a fart joke.
Yep.
And we get the farting dog. Oh, I mean, obviously it's a reference to the farting doggy from back in season 1. But I did laugh because anytime I see a pantomime horse or donkey, it automatically reminds me of Wyndham Earl and Leo Johnson.
And of course it's Leo Johnson at the back.
Yeah.
New shoes.
Oh, Wilbur!
But yeah, to skip back a little, once everyone thaws out from their wax, the wax melts and everyone's mostly okay except for Cliff. Cyborg puts Cliff back together again, and Cliff is complaining about his hand being all shit and fucked up, as Alan alluded to in his opening monologue.
Yeah. This seems like it's going to be a big thing.
They've taken a hilarious brain in a robot body character, and they're dealing with the very real issue of something like Parkinson's disease through the lens of Doom Patrol, and it should not work at all.
Right.
But my God, it's what a way to explore it, and it's beautiful.
I was thinking about this when I was watching it. It's like, can you imagine somebody walking into a writer's room and saying, "Here, listen, how about this?
Cliff Parkinson's.
I've got." So there's this character. He's essentially a tin can, but he's got a brain inside. And then somebody going, "Wait. You got to treat these subjects with respect." But the thing is, this is treating this subject with absolutely the respect that it merits. Because we know Cliff inside out at this point. We know exactly who he is. And all of his reactions to this realization about what might be wrong with him make complete sense as we see it unfold over the next few episodes. It makes sense that Cliff would want to just hide from this fact.
Yeah, his absolute refusal to get it checked out, and it's so realistic because there are, that's such a kind of human reaction to it for someone like Cliff.
100%.
That, and like everybody seems to be great at diagnosing everybody else's problems. Like as it goes on, like Cliff and Vic are kind of like, basically in one episode Vic is telling Cliff to get his shit sorted out, and then the next one it's Cliff telling Vic, and everybody's like always like avoiding their own shit. But
that's actually something that's really well observed, Alan. I think that is something that is really great about this show, is that the attention to detail. This is why I think some of the writers on the show must have some kind of background, or at least a pretty good understanding of what it's like to go to therapy. Because these are the kind of things a therapist points out to you. They'll say to you, "Okay, but you know that you've diagnosed everyone else, but you haven't diagnosed yourself."
More like deflection patrol.
The patient is the last person to ever be able to see what is going on with themselves, and quite often it's not that they can't see, it's just that they refuse to see. And I'm speaking from experience there as well. It's really, really common, but it's the way, as Alan's pointed out, the way that's doled out among the characters, that one character has at least one more character that they can project to and say, "Here, mate, you've got a fucking problem." It's absolutely ingenious writing. So we have to talk about Jane, because she has a big thing going on in this first episode. The resolution of another cliffhanger.
Oh, Cliff hanger, but ironically Cliff stops the hanging.
Ayo. That's actually a good joke.
So I don't know about you, but I did not expect the resolution of that arc to include Jane flying a biplane.
No. I didn't either, but see, when it appeared, I did remember that was in the comics, and I was like, "Oh fuck yeah, that actually is in the comic at one point." But yeah, and it's so Doom Patrol. It's so this show. That was another thing. So I actually saw some people online saying I expected more from that. It's like, what more do you want? Jesus Christ, she's literally battling with her own trauma, and all of her coping mechanisms are uniting to defeat it. That's the most beautiful thing I can imagine, and it's the most epic inner battle I can possibly imagine.
I can't get my head around someone not realising that, because I'm not saying that it was obvious writing or whatever, because it was anything but. It was really cleverly written, but it's obviously that allegory for battling your own inner demons, or battling your trauma and your depression, and utilising every coping mechanism you have to just get on with it. But it's a superhero moment, and it's just, this show is so good.
It's just enough of a superhero moment, that's the thing. Like, I think some people were like, "Oh, when all the personalities got together, I expected them to just go into battle against not Miranda." Right? And I'm like, that would look shit. There's no way you could film that.
But right now, someone at Disney is listening to this, and that is going to be the finale of the Moon Knight show.
Possibly. Well, what I was going to say was that would be and I'm not taking a dig here, James, for what you said earlier, but that would be similar to what happened at the end of WandaVision, where you just have one character fighting off staves of others with big fucking blobs of CGI. That's the only way I could imagine that going down.
Firing Hammerhead out of her hand at, at not Miranda. Yeah.
But what we got, the visual of all the personalities pushing the plane into the air was fucking fantastic, and it was exactly as victorious as it needed to be.
Yep. And she didn't just fly over her trauma, she flew through
Smashed
it.
through
Yes.
it.
And that was
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, dismantled the daddy figure. So it was great. And I also loved that the show was clever enough to have the personalities realising, oh, it will be back.
Yeah.
Because it always comes back. There's no getting rid of it. You don't just get rid of trauma that way. There was some dialogue in it that I really appreciated when not Miranda says, when she's describing who she is, she says, you know, I'm your every doubt, your every self-recrimination, all that kind of thing. And it's like, as someone who's been to therapy and understood this stuff about myself, that's really struck a note with me. I'm like, holy shit, yeah, please beat this thing.
Yeah.
Please, Jane, beat this thing. So yeah, I felt all the joy when that plane took to the air. And yeah, you can easily argue that it was predictable in the sense that Jane wouldn't die, but who cares? That's not. There's no point in something crazy and horrible happen to a character just for the sake of it either. I mean, that could be just as predictable if it was a different kind of show. So yeah, I thought it was perfect. I absolutely loved everything it gave me there.
Yeah, the fact that not Miranda / trauma evil figure was like, oh, you know what, fuck you, because I control your body, so it doesn't matter what you think.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hang you a leg. Not to get all serious and stuff, but that was so fucking grim. But so, I've never suffered from suicidal thoughts or anything, but the look of that on a screen, that was obviously like someone understands what it's like when, no matter how much you're fighting against it, it's like, well, I control the body, and man, Jesus.
I was just about to say, as someone who has had suicidal ideation quite a lot throughout their life, I really appreciated the way this was written. I actually thought it was written very sensitively and intelligently. And I think the resolution to it was just exactly the right one. Like, there is... I don't want to get too personal with this, but all I'm going to say is there is something that makes complete sense about all of those things just come together, all the coping mechanisms, just at the last minute, at the very last minute, just seeming like they're just enough to stop this for now, you know? And that's such a powerful thing.
Yeah, and it's, like you say, it's not to stop it and overcome it, it's to stave it off, right?
Yeah.
Chills, man.
Yeah, totally.
In this madcap show.
I repeat, why is this the greatest show ever made?
You go from that moment where like Jane comes back and she hugs Cliff, and then she's like, "What the fuck? Get the fuck off!" Like, we're not doing that. Like, just
again, tonally, absolutely perfect. Like, it made complete sense that Jane in that moment needed contact with and of course it's going to be Cliff, right?
Yeah.
Because they are the closest. They shared so much in season 1. And it was so cute the way they all came in for the group hug. It's just immediately it's like, no.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, she's back.
As a finale or as an opening for the new season, it was, for me, just an absolute winner.
Yeah. Yeah, all round, I thought everything was pretty much perfect.
You were saying before about how it was the end of season 2. I didn't realise that there'd been a delay caused by COVID. Like, I didn't know that. Like, so I kind of fucking loved it. That it was just like, boom, straight into, like, what I thought was the finale of the previous one into that, but it's like no, it was like a two-parter, which we got a massive break in between. So
yeah, it does have that sort of energy where you can read it either as the big finale for one season or
a big opener.
Yeah, it's like, hey, this is pulling out all the stops this season, so we're putting this high octane first episode in, which makes it all the sweeter that the next episode is way more sedate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To go off on a slightly weird tangent here, what is this? An episode of fSobriety? But there are 2 types of season finale. There's the Buffy or there's the Star Trek. Buffy season finale is the last episode is the big end of season, mad shit happens, wrap it up, and then get ready to reset for the next season. Or there's the Star Trek one, which is the first half of the 2-parter ends the season and leaves you on a cliffhanger, and it's not resolved until the start of the next season. So it could take it as, they did the Star Trek season end, whereas we know for a fact that the previous season was cut short thanks to that COVID they have nowadays. So I'm assuming that they were planning on doing the wrap it up ending.
Yeah, it felt that way to me. It felt like there'd definitely been a bit of rejigging in the writing. We definitely got more of an amalgam of both a finale and a restart kind of thing.
It's the kind of thoughtful fucking process that you're expecting from quality folk who run the Doom Patrol show. So, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, there was a wee note here I made that I thought was just a beautiful wee touch. Before Jane wakes up and Dorothy goes in and is talking to her while she's asleep, saying everyone is really missing you, we really want you to be okay, and she's got the big blue bear that she won at the fair, and she lies it next to Jane in much the same way that Jane gives Kay the lamb back. I just thought that was a really nice sort of mirroring moment. It was really cute.
I love that she gives the lamb to Kay and it brings Kay back from the brink and also ages her by about 6 years.
I was going to say that. Actually, Al and I talk about this quite a bit because we've been watching The Americans recently, and the kids in The Americans, Paige and Henry, they visibly age quite a bit season by season. And because the way The Americans is written, each season really begins like moments after, story-wise, moments after where it ended the previous season. And so each season it's like, wow, that was a rough night for Paige and Henry.
Henry's grown about a foot, and what's happened to his voice? Is that a mustache?
I rewatched Fargo season 4 recently because Sarah had never seen 2 onwards. And I was reminded of the thing we talked about when we were talking about season 4, like the COVID break they had in filming when they came back. It's like, oh,
yeah,
look,
right.
wow, so that the whole experience of spoiler alert for season 4 of Fargo, but the whole experience that Satchel had of losing Rabbi Milligan really aged him and grew him about a foot.
Yeah, he's suddenly about a foot taller. Yeah, bless them. They did their best to try and disguise that, but there was nothing they could do really.
Slouch, man, slouch.
Painting shoes on his knees and things like that. Just like, right, come on.
So yeah, we sort of get another extended epilogue to this episode as well. Like we get that again. This is another thing I love about this show. It takes the time to just have the come down. So we've had all the craziness, we had the battle there. Let's come down again, and we get all these little moments between the characters here where it's back to that feel of, oh, this is our mad broken family reunited again, for better or for worse. And I guess we'll just deal with whatever comes next. And we've got the Hollies, Air That I Breathe playing in the background. This show's always good with the needle drops. It always just provides just the right kind of atmosphere to these scenes. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to get to one thing here, by the way, that I did not particularly like about this episode, and I love this episode. There's one thing I did not like. Okay. It's to do with Cyborg, because we barely mentioned Cyborg this episode. Ronnie is turned up at this quorum facility, and apparently she's going to blow the place up. And Vic's dialogue tells us that this is a building full of people, presumably innocent people. And I'm like, Doom Patrol, you've committed the sin of Killmonger, as I call it, where we've got a villain or anti-hero who has been largely sympathetic up to a certain point, and at that certain point they do something so fucking irrational that the only reason it's in there is so that the viewers can start thinking to themselves, oh, I guess all those things that I thought she was right about are not right.
Right, yeah.
Super Soldier Lady and the Falcon and Winter Soldier as well, yes. Just murdering willy-nilly.
I call it the sin of Killmonger because that's the one that pissed me off the most, because it's like Killmonger is literally the good guy for the first half of that movie, and then no wait, he's actually a fucking murderous psychopath. Great, so now you're basically telling me, MCU, that any ideas that I thought were right are now cannot possibly be right, because anyone who holds those views must be a psychopath.
Call it the psychopath moment.
I don't mean to assume Patrol here, but I'm assuming you didn't watch Falcon and Winter Soldier.
I did not.
Right, yeah, Alan's right. They completely recycled that trope for the villain.
It's a trope that really grinds my gears. I'm so sick of it. This one isn't so bad because it doesn't quite have the political element to it, but the MCU ones bother me because there is that. Black Panther is, for me, such a frustrating movie because it's like 50% a really fun movie and 50% the worst piece of absolute neoliberal fucking globalist propaganda trash I've ever seen.
It's also got some pure, like, ropey CGI in it as well.
Oh yeah, the CGI towards the end is fucking bollocks. That is also true. So this one doesn't bother me much because there isn't quite the political dimension to it. So it didn't absolutely enrage me, but it did bother me. I was like, I'm now a wee bit nervous about where they're going to go with Ronnie's character. Yeah. And indeed Vic's character, because Vic is such a Boy Scout. And that's cool. It adds an absolutely vital dynamic to the team.
Yeah.
And obviously they are playing around with that old classic, the Boy Scout falls in love with the bad girl, and then the bad girl turns out to be badder than we thought. I just thought that Ronnie's character in season 2 was written way more intelligently than that. And so the fact that she was prepared to walk into a building and blow it up when it was full of seemingly innocent people, I can't get on board with this. It really annoyed me.
Here's the thing.
It's clobbering time.
We did talk about your one problem, just in terms of optics, that you might have had with season 2, which is 2 of the main quote-unquote villain elements were women of colour.
Yes, yeah.
Do you still have that concern regarding the villain element in season 3, or will we come to that later?
I know what you're getting at, and that is a good joke. The punchline to that joke is coming later.
Cool, right, stay tuned, listeners.
Yeah, the Ronnie thing is just bothering me. I loved that character in season 2, and like I remember saying on this podcast, I'm 100% Team Ronnie. Fuck Quorum, I don't give a fuck about those guys. But it sort of reminds me, it's sort of like the opposite of what happened in Mr. Robot. Spoiler for Mr. Robot season 3. Where Elliot spends an entire episode trying to prevent Mr. Robot from doing exactly that kind of thing, and then Mr. Robot sees sense. And that's actually a really powerful moment when Mr. Robot realises, you know, this is not a cool thing to do, and also there's a whole lot of other fucking complicated stuff going on there. But there is that sort of element to it. You know, it's one of the things that makes Mr. Robot great. Like, that was one of the things it gave me. I'm like, I don't think I've ever seen that trope subverted in that way before. So who knows? Maybe they'll do that in Doom Patrol. I don't know. I mean, in fairness, Ronnie didn't blow anybody up. That is because Vic called the authorities. Yeah. I guess what I'm saying is put a pin in this. I'm going to be keeping track of it throughout the season.
I have faith in the writers that they won't fumble it. That this is all part of a thing to make us go, ah! And then at the end we'll be like, great. We'll go from fist shake to thumbs up.
Old men shout at Clow!
Alright, well, let's wrap this episode up by talking about these this final montage of scenes that are so delicious. Alright, first off, after everything that happens in this episode, hats off to the writers and makers of this show, to the effort they put into still showing us the fucking play that they were putting on with the full musical number. They did not have to give us this, but the fact that they did is amazing. And Rita's nemesis in her big blob suit, absolutely incredible. But some of the dialogue in this was actually some of the funniest moments of this first episode. Yeah. And I think it only lasted a couple of minutes, but that's a long time. And then it was like, it could have just been a quick cutaway scene, but we got so much of it, and I was like, this is genius. Thank you, Doom Patrol writers, for being this generous that you put this in. So yeah, Rita's nemesis, after a standing ovation, presumably, walks out into the street, where a machine of some kind rises from the ground, and out pops none other than our national treasure, Michelle Gomez.
So good.
Can we take a moment to appreciate that Michelle Gomez is in Doom Patrol and how fucking perfect that is?
It's a marriage made in heaven.
Yes.
If ever an actor was made for this show.
So far, like, I know we're kind of talking here, but like, she's had, 3 or 4 lines over 3 episodes, and every one you've just been like, yes.
Yeah.
I can't wait till she gets really to get to tear into some.
I am so eager for episode 4, because I'm just waiting to see Michelle Gomez go full Michelle Gomez with the cast of Doom Patrol. I cannot imagine anything making me happier. But when this casting was first announced, I remember, James, you and I talking about it on the podcast very excitedly when it was announced. Yep. And at the time I was thinking to myself, I wonder, because I knew she was going to be playing Madame Rouge, and I'll say more about the character of Madame Rouge when we get to probably episode 2 or maybe episode 3. And I was thinking to myself, how is she going to play that role? How are they going to direct her? Because is she going to play it with an accent? Because Madame Rouge, incidentally, is one of those like classic Silver Age characters who originates from quote-unquote Europe.
Right.
And it's, you know, the way things were written in the Silver Age, where Europe could mean France, it could mean Romania, it could mean, you know, somewhere in the Soviet bloc. And she was meant to be just come from that grey sort of, Europe. And she lived in Paris for a long time, as supervillains do. Yep. And she's got a split personality, Madame Rouge. I'm going to say more about that when we get to episode 3. And she is indeed a shapeshifter, so that's accurate to what we see here. In fact, I'll just mention this now since I'm on the spiel. Madame Rouge is also an actress. She was an acclaimed theatre actress in Paris.
Oh.
So there's a lot of parallels between Madame Rouge and Rita.
Right.
So I've got a feeling they're going to play around with that a wee bit, about these characters being, to some extent, like dark reflections of one another. Madame Rouge in the comics was also romantically involved with Niles Caulder in the past, so I've got a strong feeling they're going to do that in the show, because I imagine the complicated feelings that is going to generate amongst the team. So, it's going to be a lot of fun. But one of the things I was thinking was, like, how is she going to play this? Are they going to give her an accent to do? And there was all kind of... Because Michelle Gomez can do accents.
Yeah.
I've heard her do accents. She's actually pretty good. Have to say, I am so fucking overjoyed that she's actually speaking in her own voice.
Yep.
Yes.
It gives me so much joy
The
that
full
one of our
Scotch.
national treasures is on one of my favourite shows with this great American, well, I guess international cast, but on an American show, and she's just speaking in her own Scottish voice, and I'm like, yes.
Right. I'm not a Doctor Who fan, right? Like, not a Doctor Who fan. But was she the master against...
But she was the master to Peter Capaldi's Doctor.
Yeah.
And she was fucking brilliant in that. And she was a Scottish master, and
Right,
Capaldi
cool.
was Scottish, and that was one of my favourite seasons of Doctor Who of the new era, of which I've had opinions that vary wildly depending on season to season. It can be really entertaining or it can be pure shite, but like that particular season where it was Peter Capaldi versus Michelle Gomez, it was incredible.
I just seen so many internet chuds being like really like, oh my god, I can't believe Michelle Gomez is going to ruin another fucking TV show with her pish acting. Like, and I was like,
Fuck these people
yeah,
in the
who
middle.
are you?
Yeah.
Like,
Fuck
what
all
are
the
you
way off.
watching? Yeah.
Yes, as Cliff Steele would say.
She's never been less than great in anything I've ever seen her in. Like, she's fucking amazing. Wedding Bells, you see that?
No.
She utters the immortal line, "Aye, I kicked her cunt right in," and you're like, yes, like.
I mean, she was fantastic in The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina.
I was
as
just
well.
going to bring
Yeah.
that up, yeah.
I've still not watched that. I can't believe I never watched that.
It's okay, actually.
I just like I was so up for it when they announced it.
I went into expecting absolutely nothing, and it was actually...
Yeah.
It was
I
actually
loved
right.
like the
Enjoyable.
original Sabrina TV show,
Yeah.
and I actually met one of the aunts when she was doing a stand-up show in Edinburgh. Like, my mates were like, hold on,
Amazing.
you need to come, because I said, like, I saw the poster and I was like, oh, I absolutely love her. I love her so much I can't remember her name. And we were in the bar and they were like, you need to come right now, like, leave your pint and walk this way. And I was like, what? And I walked through and there she was. And they were like, he's like your biggest fan. And I was like, yeah, we met earlier actually. And she was like, oh, hey. It was like the biggest like anticlimax for everyone who'd been involved.
He said on the way here, I'm a big fan of what's her name.
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly that.
Spoiler alert, Alan. The original aunts appear in The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina in an alternative universe as her aunts.
Nice. Right, can't do the rest of the podcast because I'm off to watch What's Her Name, my favourite ever. What's Her Chops?
We'll ask
and,
the Hamiltron
Sabrina.
to insert what her actual name is, because the Hamiltron's back now, so...
Ha, weird. I assume Alan is talking about actress and stand-up comedian Carolyn Ray. I found a sticky, faded Polaroid of her in my workspace when I got back from my holiday. Weird.
Yeah, whatever happened in that last episode, weird. Don't know what happened to her. Anyway.
She wasn't
No
the best
idea,
pleased
no
about
idea.
something, but, you know.
Yeah, she was a wee bit angry about something towards the end. I don't know what it was.
So,
Um,
yeah, like, Sabrina's
anyway.
answer.
So yeah, Michelle Gomez has the most Michelle Gomez entry that a Michelle Gomez ever Michelle Gomez in a show by getting out of that, let's call it a machine,
Yep.
and just pissing in the street.
That's the stuff.
She wipes herself with the fucking... with the program from the like she just
thing
holds
is-
her hand out, like, can I get that for a second?
yeah.
And then gives it back to her.
I think that was my favourite part. It's like, you'd have that bit back. But the funny thing is, like, because we've Rita's nemesis, we hate her because we love Rita, and so we sort of instantly love this character. And it's like, oh, cool. Now, of course, Rita's nemesis possibly didn't deserve to die.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to lie, I did message you, James, immediately afterwards with the words, rest in piss, Rita's nemesis. But the slapstick of Michelle Gomez just then getting back up and shouting down, well, I guess I'll find Niles Caulder myself then. And then just walking the wrong direction down the street and then backtracking.
That moment.
That was great.
Good shit. So that's the end of the episode.
Or is it?
Mid-credits shenanigans.
This is a superhero show. Of course there's a mid-credits sequence.
Yeah, I think I said to you in my message, James, this has more endings than Lord of the Rings. We get Jedi Force Ghost Niles in a brief moment at the fireplace. A couple of the sex ghosts from season 2 inviting him up for fun times. And Timothy Dalton, God bless him, his delivery of, oh no, and then the pause, and then just fumbling at his shirt button. Oh, what the hell. Absolutely fantastic.
Incredible.
And he's just about to get down to some fun, and then suddenly he's yanked away because...
Dun, dun, dun.
We cut to... Oh, I think we actually forgot to mention that Danny the Ambulance had a cameo in this episode, because Dorothy goes away in Danny the Ambulance to go and bury her father back in the Yukon Territory. So we snap there to the Yukon Territory, and who's there but our old pal Willoughby Kipling beheading Niles' corpse. And bear in mind what I said earlier about what happens in the comics. This is a moment where I almost stood up out of my chair and went, oh shit, they're doing it, it's happening. So what I'm saying by that, guys, is if you haven't read that era of the comic, and it probably won't be a huge surprise to hear me say this, you might not have seen the last of Niles. Or you've at least you've not seen the last of his head. Think Futurama, but funnier.
Amazing.
And so, yeah, that was Season 3, Episode 1, or Season 2, Episode 10, Possibilities Patrol, to which I am scoring in our Mr. Robot-themed scoring system. Guys, I'm scoring this 8 5s out of 9. It loses 1 point just for that misgiving about Ronnie.
I'm scoring it 8.5 5s out of 9 because I would have given it a 9, but the next episode was somehow better. And just for scale, the next episode, spoiler alert, is a 9 for me. So just for scale, it's an 8.5 5s out of 9 for me.
Sweet. Alan?
Nice. For no reason whatsoever that I can think of at all, other than, Timothy Dalton was a Bond, I'm going to give it 7 007s out of 7.
This guy.
That's weird. There was a weird reverb in your voice there, Alan, that sounded somehow familiar, but I don't know how.
Yeah, where have we heard that before?
God knows. Don't even think about it too much. Don't even trip, dog.
All right. Well,
I think we've reached a point where it's time for a wee intermission. Maybe go hit the bar, wee bar break. What do you think, guys?
I think that's great.
Sounds
Whose
good.
round is it?
Oh, it's probably mine. It's always mine.
All right. We'll be right back after these important messages.
What we all drinking, guys?
So after 2 dry episodes, Craig, I'm back on the fSobriety, and I'm having a Tron, not the Hamiltron, the other Tron classic, a big cold glass of East Coast IPA from
nice, that
Slavery
does sound
Apologist
good.
Screen King.
The good kind of slavery apologists. They apologise for their involvement in slavery.
We're still open for sponsorships.
Yeah,
King.
and with that slogan, I don't know how it can go wrong.
Yep. We appreciate you for your slavery apologies.
Alan?
Me, I'm in training at the moment, so I am drinking water.
Boo!
I know.
Boo this man.
I'm up at the crack of fucking dawn tomorrow, so I'm driving, so I have to be...
Hey, what does Don think about that, eh? Woo.
Ho, 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 zing!
Well, I'm drinking the old Casillero del Diablo, which is probably my favourite
Nice.
of all the wine. I'm good at wine, me.
Wine Patrol.
Wine Patrol over here. Wine. Before we dive back into the Doom Patrol, might as well, while we're taking a wee break here, just ask you guys, have you got anything else in your eyeballs lately that's been entertaining?
Why would we be talking about other things we've watched, Craig? What is this? An episode? Wait.
Hang on. Is this an
episode
episode
of...
fSobriety TV, the podcast in which we discuss all things TV that are not the main bit of TV we're talking about?
I think it might be.
Cue the music. Hello and welcome to another edition of fSobriety TV, the podcast in which I eloquently expressed the thing we do here just a moment ago. James, Alan, you were about to tell me about things you've watched.
Yes, so recently I caught up finally on Mare of Easttown.
Oh yeah, how did you find it?
I thought it was really fucking good.
Yeah, it was good, yeah.
I don't know why, I don't know how, but somehow I had kind of forgotten that Kate Winslet is a great actress.
Yeah.
Like, she is stellar in that. She is the most scumbag cop I've seen on TV in a long time. And she absolutely revels in it.
Yeah.
I think I said to you, Craig, it reminded me of if the original series of Twin Peaks was from the viewpoint of Harry rather than Cooper, and if Harry was a corrupt scumbag.
Yeah, evil Harry.
Yeah. But yeah, I absolutely loved it. I can see why it got some of them Emmys that they have nowadays.
Although none of those Emmys were for Evan Peters' drunk acting, which I maintain is the best bit of drunk acting I've seen on telly in a long time.
Yeah, Evan Peters was so good in that. Like,
Yeah.
so good. He was just a really, really bright spot. And that's the thing, it was a really fucking dark, brutal show, but it also made me laugh so much. Much like our Doom Patrol, it handled the kind of different tones really well. So yeah, I would give Mare of Easttown probably 7.55 out of 9.
Nice.
Cool. It was another of those shows that it also does that thing where it's like essentially a soap opera, because you have this very specific locale and all of these different characters, and all of the characters we get to spend quite a bit of time with, you know?
Yep.
And it does have, like, I feel like this is a thing that's happened now in the age of prestige TV, that all of the best shows are actually soap operas. That's my big theory.
Yep. It's probably written
Soap
by
operas
people who,
are actually high art.
yeah, people who grew up watching soap operas probably have that ingrained in them, that,
Yeah.
that this is how you structure shows, but also murder.
Right. Yeah.
The other show that I have watched recently was 9 Perfect Strangers, which is another Leanne Moriarty / David E. Kelly / Nicole Kidman joint, much like Big Little Lies was, but it's a very different story from Big Little Lies. It's really fucking oddball and like unsettling and weird. It's got Bobby Cannavale in it, so of course it's going to be good.
Automatically elevated in quality.
Yeah.
There is a scene in which Bobby Cannavale is wearing a t-shirt of the band Styx.
Oh, Mr. Robot meta reference.
Yeah, I loved it. Melissa McCarthy is in it, and not someone whose performances I particularly have enjoyed in anything I've ever seen Melissa McCarthy in, but god damn, that woman has got acting range, and she's great in 9 Perfect Strangers.
Well, there you go.
I don't want to spoil too much about it if anyone's not seen it, but essentially the story is 9, unsurprisingly, strangers, unsurprisingly,
Spoiler.
attend a wellness retreat run by Nicole Kidman's character, and it's a super exclusive wellness retreat. And Nicole Kidman's character is a Russian former CEO who...
Maybe that's where Doom Patrol should have went instead of where they go in the next episode.
Yeah, who suffered from a near-death experience and then totally changed their life around and started this wellness facility, but...
It's like a more wholesome Iron Man.
Well, you say wholesome, but like real brief spoilers here. If you don't want to hear what it sort of gets into, skip ahead like 30 seconds to a minute. But essentially what she does is she starts microdosing them with psilocybin and then gradually increases the doses on everyone until like the show just becomes this fucking like psychedelic freak out for everyone involved, and it's absolutely stunning. It's great. It's really dark, but it's really intriguing. And yeah, if you liked Big Little Lies, which you probably should have done because it was great, then yeah, check it out. It's on that Amazon Prime they have nowadays. So if you want to give Jeff Bezos some money because he's a bit short.
He's down to his last spaceship, isn't he?
Yeah, he's down his last trip around the Earth. And then check it out. Speaking of which, of Amazon Prime, this might be of particular interest to anyone who still wants to see The Green Knight but hasn't yet. It's on Amazon Prime now.
Well, there you go.
It's right up there. So yeah, check it out. You can watch it online totally legally like I did.
Nice save.
But that's been my watches.
What about yourself, Alan? Have you watched anything?
Yeah, like the basic bitch that I am, I watched Squid Game, which is like Battle Royale, Hunger Games, Seven, Saw, you name it, anti-capitalist, it's fucking brilliant.
Oh, you buried the lead there. You should have said anti-capitalist first. Now I'm interested.
It's on my to-watch list.
It's on the
This
list.
is how good it is. For reasons I missed episodes 1 and 2. Now, how Alan, on a fucking show which is on Netflix, did you manage to miss 2 episodes? Because reasons. Like, someone else was watching it, and I joined in about 10 minutes into episode 3 and watched most of the rest of it over the next day or so, and then fell asleep during some of the big reveals in episode 9, which is the final episode. Woke up for the very final bit of it, and it's like tomorrow or whatever I'm going to start watching it from episode 1 again, because I loved it, having missed the setup and the big payoff at the end. It's fucking amazing. That's how good this show is.
So you essentially did what there is this weird trend in podcasts now that I've noticed. There's a whole spate of podcasts where the hosts watch the first episode of a series and then watch the final episode of a series and then give their thoughts on what the fuck it was all about. And I'm
Really?
Why is that a format for a podcast?
That's
I've seen
insane
several do this now.
I was actually gutted that I missed the first
whatever.
couple episodes, but I was like, fuck it, we're in now. It was like Vietnam, do you know what I mean? We're not getting out. So, I thoroughly recommend it. It's fucking really, really violent and gross, so... Yeah.
Meanwhile, I finished watching Reservation Dogs, which I was talking about prior.
Yes.
Oh, such a good show, so satisfying. The ending had just enough of an ending and also left with us a wee smidge of a cliffhanger. But it's such a beautifully human show, and it's the best kind of beautifully human show that focuses on a very specific set of characters. And I think I said, but I'll just reiterate that it is one of those shows that is simultaneously really funny, but also has some absolutely fantastic, somber moments that deal with really weighty subjects. There is a couple of episodes with content warnings that deal with mental illness, but those episodes are still really funny. And the young cast are just so good. They're so engaging. Yeah, I'm looking forward. It's been renewed for a second season, so that'll be something to look forward to. It's only 8 episodes. They're only half an hour long, so it's not going to take up much of your time, but I can't imagine why you would regret watching it. I also watched, I got around to watching season 4 of Slasher.
Oh, Slasher.
Oh shit, that show.
Does it elevate the fucking nastiness even more, or... I'm guessing
I don't
yes.
know that it could, but it's definitely on a par with season 3 where the detail of the kills go. But for anybody who's not familiar with this show, I did talk about it in a previous episode, but if you've not listened to that, Slasher is what it says on the tin. It's a Canadian anthology show that essentially each season is an 8-episode slasher movie. But there's always really good characterization in each of the seasons, and there's always a very a really intricate backstory, and each of the seasons kind of goes back and forth in time, and there's all sorts of just increasingly bizarre and ridiculous revelations about the characters' lives. I wouldn't say that season 4 is necessarily the most outlandish one yet, but it's still up there with what the show has done quality-wise. I'll just give a brief description. It's about a wealthy family who all attend a family reunion on this remote island.
Agatha Christie'd the shit out of it, aye.
Right, aye. And they've been called there by the patriarch of the family, who is about to die, and his last wish is that all of his family
You're going full
engage
Muttley
in
on
this kind of battle royale. Essentially, they have to solve a bunch of puzzles and games which are increasingly dangerous physically, and the winner/survivor gets to inherit his fortune. And the patriarch in question is played by David Cronenberg, and
nice.
he is clearly having a fucking great time playing this role. Just the absolute worst piece of shit on the planet. There are some moments where... Now, David Cronenberg is not a great actor. He's okay. But he plays this role brilliantly. There's certain lines in it that are just so great because it's David Cronenberg saying it. There's a scene in one of the early episodes where it turns out he realises that one of his sons is bisexual, And instead of getting really upset about it, he doesn't approve, but instead of getting really upset about it, he just makes all kinds of really off-colour jibes over dinner about it. And David Cronenberg's delivery is just so deadpan and straight-faced. And there are some lines where he's talking about, I should have figured because the fact you like George Michael and his girly voice and stuff like this. I was like, this is fucking fantastic. The fact David Cronenberg has seen these lines is brilliant. But yeah, the kills are incredible. The storyline gets increasingly ridiculous as it goes on. And not gonna lie, fucking 9 5s out of 9. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Outstanding.
Nice. It's what we were saying earlier, like soap opera plus murder.
Yeah, pretty much.
One other thing I watched isn't a TV show, but everyone knows the Screen Junkies Honest Trailers series on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
That I watched the honest trailer for David Lynch's Dune that they've done in anticipation of Denis Villeneuve's Dune coming out. And it's great because it does the usual thing that honest trailers does, where it just, it just rips into the source material and slags it. But they do a commentary on it as well. They do like commentary tracks for certain honest trailers, and the honest trailer commentary is beautiful because it's 45 minutes of the 3 writers of the honest trailer just talking about how much they fucking love David Lynch's Dune and how bad they felt having to find fault in it. They're just basically calling people that don't like it a fucking idiot.
Fucking normies.
It's really sweet.
See, just as you're mentioning that, Dune it just got like a 30th anniversary remaster box set thing with like all sorts of like super duper fucking extras and whatnot, which I'm like hovering over the button to fucking buy. But I seen whilst we were recording earlier on that Mulholland Drive is getting a 20th anniversary super duper Christmas edition thing. Just
nice
because we mentioned Dune there, like
Mulholland Dune.
Oh, speaking of Denis Villeneuve, I finally watched for the first time Blade Runner 2049, having not seen it
it's
before.
like the good Blade Runner.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah,
Joy is the best part of it.
I've not seen it.
I was
never that big a fan of Blade Runner, honestly. So
Same,
I
but probably quite like 2049
really
then, because
yeah,
it's really good. Yeah,
yeah.
It's like, here's what you could have won. So Denis Villeneuve obviously into rebooting 80s sci-fi box office flops and $100 million.
Fucking idiot
budgets.
didn't even make 6 different versions of it either. Like, what was he thinking?
I want to mention real quick another thing I'm watching currently on Netflix is Midnight Mass.
Oh,
from
I was
the
going to ask you
guy
about this.
Mike Flanagan.
your Raoul Coley starring show.
Right, Mike Flanagan of the Haunting of Hill House / Bly Manor / Doctor Sleep / Hush / Absentia fame.
/R.
Who I think is a really solid filmmaker. I don't think all of his stuff is great, but it's always got great stuff in it.
Yeah.
And one of the things I really like about him is that sometimes I'm a bit suspicious when a filmmaker sets out to pursue one genre, because I kind of think, are you really interested in filmmaking, or are you just interested in that genre? Whereas I feel like Mike Flanagan is actually a filmmaker, in capital letters. He really knows how to put things on screen and how to structure things in a really interesting way. And his stuff is always really human. He's really concerned about characterization. And this Midnight Mass is a 7-part series on Netflix. And it's completely written and directed by Mike Flanagan. And Mike Flanagan, obviously, in the past, he's done a lot of adaptations or quasi-adaptations. And so to see him do something completely original is kind of interesting. Albeit he is wearing a Stephen King influence on his sleeve here. Like, it is set on a remote island community just off the northeastern seaboard of the US. It's really tightly written, really brilliantly performed. The whole cast are so good. It's essentially about a new youngish priest comes to this community to take over from their old priest who has quote-unquote disappeared. And after his arrival, certain seemingly miraculous things begin to happen, and some of the residents start looking younger than they were yesterday. And for the first 3 episodes, it really plays around with that mystery in the background, but really it's more concerned with the characters and how they react to it and what their lives are. And there's like a lot of great themes to do with addiction and mental illness, and also Mike Flanagan is clearly working through a lot of complicated feelings about religion. That plays a big role in it. The guy who plays the priest is, you will recognise him, both of you, is Hamish Linklater, who played Clark in Legion. And that guy is a fucking great actor. He is so good in this, man.
I was watching the trailer for it and I thought I recognised him, but I couldn't think from where.
He's so good in this, man. Like, honestly, there's moments where, even when he's getting really animated, like up at the pulpit, he just seems so naturalistic. And there's moments where it's like you could almost feel like you're watching a documentary about an actual priest. He's so good. Like, it's just one of those performances where he puts the pauses and the stammers in just the right places to make it seem really naturalistic. And his character gets a little more outrageous. I'm currently on the 5th episode, 2 more to go, and I'm just like, this guy deserves to win some awards for this performance. It's so fucking good. I will say it involves a horror trope that I'm not normally a fan of at all. And if it had revealed its cards in the first episode, I might not have been interested. But there's a reveal at the end of the 3rd episode, and it was actually, I think, the right decision creatively, because it gets you to think about the story from a much more human angle rather than centering the supernatural element from the start kind of thing. It involves a supernatural phenomenon that I'm just not a fan of particularly, but fuck me, story has really made it interesting. It's portrayed it in such an interesting way. And I also sort of kicked myself for not seeing the reveal coming, because I was like, okay, that should have been fucking obvious, but okay. Yeah, it's a really interesting story, great themes. Your man Rahul Kohli is really good in it also. I don't think that guy can give a bad performance though. Yeah, he's always
amazing
great.
On Twitter as well.
Yeah, we love
he really
Rahul
is. He's the
Kohli's
most
Twitter.
entertaining guy on Twitter, yeah. So yeah, highly recommend it. Get it in your
Nice.
eyeballs.
Yep, I've literally heard nothing but good stuff about it. It's definitely on my watch list.
I'm really intrigued by it, but I also want to find out, Craig, is it something that is going to make me feel freaky?
Right,
or...
Alan, I was actually thinking about this. There is one episode where it's not stigmata imagery, but it's a wee bit stigmata adjacent. And I was like, I don't know whether that would bother Alan or not.
It will. Like, if it's even like slightly kind of touching on it, then yes.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. That happens in the 3rd episode, funnily enough, that I'm talking about, and it did cross. You were actually at the forefront of my mind. I was like, I wonder if that's the kind of thing that would bother Alan.
I seen the trailer for it, and I was like, I'm not going to be able to watch this.
When you were trying to figure out if it's the sort of thing that would affect Alan, were you thinking, what stigmata are you? Hey! I mean, unless anyone else has seen any bullshit, rubbish horror recently, we should maybe move on. Craig?
Well, I feel like you're leading me down a path here. Well, this doesn't come under TV, but I guess I'll mention it here. I did have the, experience of watching James Wan's movie Malignant, which has the absolute distinction of being definitely a film I've seen now. James Wan's latest, Malignant. James Wan, he of Saw and Conjuring fame, and also director of the Aquaman movie.
Fuck,
What a
really?
strange filmography that man has. And yet he seems to keep returning to horror, and I'm going to say something that might upset some people out there. I don't know why he keeps returning to horror, because he's not good at it. One of the things about horror is that you need to inject some sense of atmosphere, and I feel like every one of his movies is completely devoid of atmosphere. Most of them are just a procession of mad shit happening.
James Wan, more like James Wank, am I right?
That's exactly the same joke I made. What was your joke, James?
Was it James 1 minute is 1 minute too many to watch his bullshit movie?
Okay, you know what? I'll start off this. I'll just say this real quick. Sort of hats off to James Wan for getting Warner Brothers to put up the money, lots and lots of money, for what has to be the most bonkers piece of schlock ever put out by a mainstream studio for at least many decades.
Yuri Ball is sitting, like, spitting his beer all over the fucking...
Aye,
computer at this
exactly.
point.
That alone, I'm like, hats off, good job, but also sort of slow clap. But the thing is, and I've seen a lot of people online talk about how crazy the plot is and how mental the 3rd act plot twist is. And I have to say to these people, have you never seen any, and I'm going to bring back David Cronenberg in this, have you never seen any early David Cronenberg movies? Because the plot of this movie is no crazier than the plot of The Brood, for example. It actually has some similarities to The Brood in some ways. Like there's that... The twist makes no fucking sense, right? It literally doesn't make sense. But that's fine. It doesn't necessarily need to make sense. But what the film unfortunately lacks is, first of all, in the first 2/3, I think he tries his best to instill a sense of foreboding, and there just isn't any. Like, the film is just very, very flat, and the scenes just process from one another really, really quickly. Bang, bang, bang. And there are elements of the film that are sort of laughable, but your laughter is kind of stifled by the fact that it's just not presented in a particularly engaging way. Like, for example, in fact, the Red Letter Media Review made quite a big deal of this, and it was one of the things I noticed as well. The house that the main character lives in, when you see it from the outside, it's a really narrow 2-story building, but all the interior is like, every room is like a fucking ballroom. It's like, what is going on, man? Why is this woman living in a fucking TARDIS, and why is no one mentioning it?
Is it like James' new flat?
It's quite... like, if it was Relic and it was part of the story, then I'd be like, okay, but it's just never mentioned. They're like, what the fuck is happening? And it's one of those things where I'm like, is James Wan just taking the piss out of us here? Are we supposed to notice this and say, here, mate, what is going on? It just is like, even the things that normally would make this kind of movie an enjoyable schlock movie are sort of missing from James Wan's version of that sort of movie, because his direction just isn't very good. And there's a lot of stuff in the first 2/3 where he could have got some mileage out of creating a wee bit of spooky atmosphere, but he just chooses not to. And then in the final third, where it gets into some really ludicrous action, the action sequences are so ham-fistedly directed as well that I'm just like, it's like you had all these ideas and then thought to yourself, what's the worst fucking way I can do these things?
Yes, the Zack Snyder school of filmmaking, yes.
Part of me is like, I'm sort of glad this movie exists, just in a perverse way. Like, hey, check what Warner Brothers gave this guy all this money to do just because he gave them a hit movie with Aquaman. And it's like a lesson in Hollywood fuckery. It's like, Warner Brothers, learn the lesson, don't do this. Or if you're going to do it, give it to a more talented filmmaker, for fuck's sake.
Or at least get Jason Momoa to take his tap off.
Yeah, I saved myself the time of watching it by only watching the Red Letter Media review of it, and I believe they say it's essentially like it's the 21st century Freddy got fingered.
Oh, you did say that, yeah.
It's like, give a guy all this money to make a film, and he's just like, I'm going to make a fucking disaster deliberately.
Sorry, I used to work with a guy who gave me a loan of Freddy Got Fingered on DVD, right, before fucking Blu-rays. I've still got it, and I've never watched it. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I feel bad if he's listening, which I doubt he is. I'm sorry, Martin. Like, if you want it back, I'll buy you a new one, because I have no idea where it is.
I've never seen Freddy Got Fingered, but it also reminds me that the first time I ever heard that title, I assumed it was like a pornographic Nightmare on Elm Street sequel. And I think that wraps it up for another episode of fSobriety.
1, 2, Freddy's actually coming for you. Like,
Toodle bit.
Good ep.
Good ep.
Good ep.
Those guys sure have watched some TV.
Alright, speaking of good eps, shall we get into Doom Patrol Season 3, Episode 2, Vacay Patrol?
Bow, 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 down, boom, down, boom, down, boom, down, boom, down, boom, down, bow.
Your one-man band version, I think, is actually superior to the abortion we did earlier. So it's directed by Christopher Manley. Christopher Manley was also responsible for Doom Patrol from Season 1, and Fun Size Patrol, and Wax Patrol. Again, a guy with a lot of big hitters in the Doom Patrol catalogue. And it was written by Tom Farrell, who is also a producer on the show. Alright, let's dig into this, because see this first fucking scene, guys? I'm not gonna lie, I squeed so hard. Monsieur Mala and the Brain. I have been waiting for this since Season 1. And I actually did not think we would ever get it, but here we are. Fucking Monsieur Mala. Fucking talking French gorilla. This is what I wanted on screen.
I've not even read that much Doom Patrol, but I was really looking forward to seeing them on TV as well, so when they showed up, I was delighted, yes.
For casual DC Comics fans, they may or may not be aware that there are multiple villainous apes across different DC storylines, and yeah,
it's true.
So, yep, this was fucking hilarious.
But yeah, Monsieur Mala and the Brain are straight from the Silver Age of the Brotherhood of Evil. And the Brotherhood of Evil in the comics has gone through many variations, eventually becoming the Brotherhood of Dada and Grant Morrison's run. Interesting to note, from the trailer of this season, it seems that we have heard Michelle Gomez mention the Sisterhood of Dada. So they are going in the Dada direction, and I can't fucking wait for what that's going to toll out. That stings, said. So yeah, classic Brotherhood of Evil, and introducing Gargoax. Everything in this is an absolute delight. His wee assistant Samuelson.
Send him in, please.
Okay, let's mention Samuelson for a moment. I think we have to. Yep. Played by Billy Boyd, star of Lord of the Rings, as Pippin Took.
Yep. Also doing his Scottish accent as well.
Yeah, so I think now we have to mention what you alluded to earlier, James. What is going on in this season with all the Scottish villains?
There are 3 episodes, 3 Scottish villains.
Whatever it is, I'm here for it.
Is it just because they got Michelle Gomez and she was so great that they thought, oh, all Scottish people must be great at villains?
Yes. They're obviously big fans of the Avengers, and I mean like the John Steed, Emma Peel, sorry. Like Sean Connery.
The John Peel Avengers.
Peel, that would be a good Avengers. John Peel and Emma Bunton.
He's just half man, half biscuit.
It starts quietly.
But yeah, Billy Boyd is giving it his all here as well. He's going the full bar on this role.
Yep.
He's like fully enunciating every fucking rolled R in his speech, and I'm here for it.
Yes.
I love that a little red alien has that accent. Like,
yeah, it's brilliant.
Also,
it's
the
a great
he's got a
juxtaposition.
portable gramophone, like.
Yeah.
And like right up to the present day, he still has the fucking gramophone. Fantastic. But it's exactly that kind of juxtaposition of elements that this show is just so good at. But yeah, Gargoax, who is indeed a Silver Age DC character from the Brotherhood of Evil, and looks exactly like this on the comic page. And again, it's just one of those moments like, yeah, this is the show that can pull that off. Christopher Nolan would never do this.
Gargoax is so good. Who is it that plays that? I didn't take a note of who was playing him.
I looked up, the actor's name is Stephen Murphy, and it doesn't look, from his IMDb, he's not done a whole lot of stuff, but apparently he's Australian.
His performance is absolutely spot on. It's so on the nose.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I guess I'll just preface this here because it'll come back at the end of the episode, but it's one of those stories that's got that subtext of this is basically about how a corporation will destroy your soul if you stay loyal to it. You know, and that's essentially what the Brotherhood of Evil is. Everything about this is just so corporate. This whole setup is so bizarre. Like, you're kind of thrown off that subtext because it's visually so ridiculous. Here's a brain in a jar, and here's a talking gorilla. And now here's a green and red alien. Ultimately, this is a story about how one's soul is destroyed by working for the man and not having your loyalty rewarded, essentially. And Gargoax's journey, and we can actually talk about Gargoax's journey in this episode, is that he comes towards the end of the episode to say, I'm not doing this anymore. And he's redeemed.
He shakes off the shackles of corporate bullshit and becomes his own man, and it's lovely. It's tragic because, as we, I'm going to say spoilers, but I guess if you're listening to this, you've probably seen it.
Yeah, well, you should assume you're all in.
But yeah, it's so tragic at the end, though, when he comes in, he's just like, run. Oh.
Yeah, and he essentially sacrifices himself to save the Doom Patrol.
Yeah.
That's the journey he's taken. It's fucking crazy.
When he's talking, like when they're in the dining room and Vic and all that walk in, or like they walk in and Vic and that are sitting there, and Billy Boyd says to Gargoax, he's like, "Who they? Do you know them?" And he's like, "Well, I know the robot is Cliff.
The robot, yes, he's good people."
Yeah, fucking amazing.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
When he's telling the joke when he first gets to the resort in the 60s, and the punchline is in his own language, and Billy Boyd translates it. You're a proctologist? Then you can and everybody's staring at him, and it's like,
you'll have no trouble removing your head from your arsehole, or whatever it is he says.
Again, rolling those R's.
This whole setup at the start, they give Gargoax Rita's photo. Now, what's going on here? Is this some kind of timey-wimey nonsense?
I think so, because what we failed to mention when we were talking about episode 1 was that, as part of Niles Caulder as well, he leaves Rita that key.
Yes. Oh shit, we totally forgot to talk about that. Fuck. Okay, let's talk about that right now then, before we go any further. So yeah, Rita is left the key that Niles left. Niles leaves her the letter saying that she's the only one he trusts, which I guess there's a context for that, and that she's the longest serving member of this version of the Doom Patrol. But you know what, man? That's another one of those things. This in terms of storytelling that the show has done so well, because we feel all this weight on Rita because she's already having all these complicated emotions about how she feels about Niles, and now he's left her what could be a big box of shit,
Yep.
or it could be a box of cookies, you know, and there's just no way of knowing.
And more so than anyone else, she has been the one that has been struggling with the idea of being and failing to be a hero.
Yeah.
Her whole beekeeper persona, when it
Yeah.
all fell apart, is like one of the most tragic moments of season 2.
Yeah, for sure. And it's hammered home as well, the fact that when the alarm goes off on the secret telephone and Rita is trying to reach behind the bookcase to pick up the phone, that she just fails to get her powers to work. And it's like, Rita. And it's just all of that metaphor of where she is psychologically. It's just, man, it's so painful. By the way, I wanted to make special mention of the effect in that scene. There's a bit where, like, her big rubbery arms slap down the shelves.
Yeah.
That was such a great effect.
It was
That's one of the
fantastic.
best bits of CGI I've seen. But yeah, super sad. But anyway, presumably this somehow ties in a timey-wimey way why the Brotherhood of Evil in 1949 have got this photo of Rita and are telling Gargoyax to wait for her at this location. Now, there's a couple of ways of reading this. Do the Brotherhood of Evil know that it's going to take that long and they just don't give a fuck? And they're like, I'll just let that guy sit there and wait so we know we've got somebody there? Or are they just unsure about when this is happening? I guess we've no way of knowing right now.
I assumed that it could be either because both are highly indicative of corporate management bullshit.
Yeah.
Like one is being completely uncaring and the other is being completely incompetent.
True. Yeah, that's true.
I had like a slight theory that maybe Niles has kind of had an idea or something was going on and has like somehow circumvented their plan, and that's what's making it take so long. But I might just be fucking making shit up.
Who knows? I guess we'll sit back and wait for that to become clear, possibly.
Like Gargoyax sitting back waiting on Rita showing up.
Yeah,
Ever
indeed.
vigilant.
So that scene you mentioned, Alan, about when he when he first turns up in the dining room, I love how it's prefaced by Gargoyax on the communicator saying, "Our presence shall go unnoticed."
Samuelson comes in and announces him to the dining room.
See when Billy Boyd walks in and starts playing the gramophone and he's shouting, "Gargoyax, destroyer or devourer of worlds," but the waiter's just walking by and like shuts the door. He's just like kind of staring at him like, what the fuck? Like shuts the door over.
And Samuelson serves him his dinner as well. It's like, where did he get that plate from? What's fucking happening? But it's another way in which this show just revels in its own absurdity. You know, the fact that the people assembled have that one moment of saying, what the fuck's this? But then as soon as Gargoyax introduces himself and tells the joke, everybody's fine with it. And it's like, cool, whatever. Green guy, red guy, sure.
For a big green guy, he's super fucking charming, you know? So we flash forward through the ages of him waiting.
Yeah.
There's a very distinctly sort of Dirty Dancing, Kellerman's sort of vibe to that resort they're at as well.
Even though it's like they arrive in the 50s, it just makes me think of the 70s. Sort of makes me think of Heidi High, or in this case more like Bidey Bye. But yeah, so that happens, and we go all the way up to at least 1991, and we know he's still there at that point. And then we go back to Doom Manor in present day, and Rita is still contemplating this key, trying to convince herself that the alarm was probably nothing important, even though we know that it coincided with the arrival of Madame Rouge. Rita starts to have a bit of a meltdown, literally. And my favourite moment here is she removes a plant from its pot and melts herself into the plant pot.
Garbage pail Rita.
There's a reason why this is particularly funny, not just on its own visually, but spoiler for something I said earlier about Niles Caulder coming back as a severed head. In the comics, there is a part in the comics, I think it's at the start of Rachel Pollack's run, where Niles is actually a head in a pot. And so I thought they were doing like a kind of sly nod there to that. In amongst all of this, Kay convinces Jane to go on vacation with the others, because they've decided that's what they need, which makes sense when you think about it. Guys, they've been through a hell of a lot. But I really like this moment where Kay tells Jane it's fine to go and relax, There's another key moment later in this episode, which I'm not going to mention just yet, but I'm just going to warn you right now. The key moment's making me blub. So yeah, we get more of the what you were referring to earlier, James, about Cliff trying to deny the truth about there being some neurological problem. We see him at his daughter and her wife's house, cradling the baby with the twitching hand. I kind of like how the twitching hand doesn't seem to upset the baby.
Aye,
In
so
fact,
yeah,
maybe even comforts
rocks
the
it
baby.
to sleep, yeah.
That was quite nice.
I love Cliff, the overbearing granddad, like trying to make up all the lost time and shit.
Yes.
It's simultaneously super heartwarming, and you're kind of like, he's back, Cliff.
Aye, rein it in, mate. Bless him. And he goes out for a walk with the baby, and the lawn sprinklers go off, and then of course he sees he's up again, and it's
So Cliff clearly also in need of a holiday here.
Yeah. To quote Arnie in Terminator 2, I need a vacation. While all this shit is going down, Larry is having a hell of a time of it. He ended last episode by shooting off to space because the negative spirit clearly wanted to take him somewhere. How do we interpret what happens to Larry here? He goes to this sort of negative zone with this beautiful cosmic backdrop and sees himself while he's in his undamaged body, but sees himself as the burnt version, and then he becomes the burnt version, and then the negative spirit reveals itself as separate. How are we interpreting this? What's happening here?
I was watching this, not going to lie, really early in the morning on my way to a gig in England, and I was super tired and I hadn't had much coffee. I was just watching it going, what the fuck?
It's almost a Twin Peaks The Return moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thinking about it
Because
now.
it's just, there's no context for it whatsoever.
Yeah.
Because I missed how he went from that to being back in Doom Manor. I was like, wait, what? What?
I'm
what the fuck
going
just
to
happened?
mention that in a second, actually. Yeah. Well, going forward, it seems like the negative spirit has remained in space, as far as we can tell. Now, to my knowledge, this doesn't correspond to anything I know about from the comics, so I have no idea where it's going or what they're doing with this. But it's certainly interesting. But fucking poor Larry, could give the guy a break, man.
Yeah. I'm going to go out on a limb here and assume this is totally wrong. I'm going to assume Patrol yet again.
Is that the title of this episode?
Yeah, do you know what? It is now. I assumed from the point of him being in the negative spirit's kind of home place, and the negative spirit showing him all this stuff, and then suddenly he's back in Doom Manor. I'm like, is this Larry Trainor's Mulholland Drive? Is everything else in this series just happening in his head?
Oh shit, it's the Larry Coop loop.
Yeah.
That's a hip reference to our Twin Peaks episodes. Yeah, so that's all a bit sad and confusing. So Larry's in no condition. Well, in fact, he's not there when they all go on vacay. So by the time he gets back, they've already left. So let's wrap up the Larry chat, I guess. Yeah, there is that strange transition where 1 minute Larry is in that cosmic space, and then the next thing he's back in his bedroom. And there is no visual representation of how he got back there. So yeah, it's a bit of a strange choice, but clearly done deliberately. Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird one. Because I will admit, when that episode, when I was watching the second episode, I thought similarly to you. Maybe this is some kind of psychological illusion, because it wouldn't be the first time the negative spirit has done that for Larry. Mm-hmm. But we then see in episode 3 that Larry's story continues and he interacts with the other characters, so it doesn't really show it up. So yeah, don't know. It's good. It's one to watch, I guess. Him
sort of appearing in his bed again and waking up just reminded me of the end of Labyrinth.
Yeah, you have no power over me.
Yeah.
Alright, so the others are heading off on vacay. Flit brings the others to Clara's place so they can pick up Cliff, and Hammerhead helpfully gets Cliff back to a state of movement. Thanks, Hammerhead!
Yep. Just needs a little done.
Alright, so they end up at the grimmest version of Butlins, or Centre Parks, ever committed to screen.
Don't go swimming in the water. Like, leeches gather on the shore.
Well, worth reminding ourselves here that Rita at this point is still in what Jane terms her sad sack mode, when she's just a blob in a sack. What happens from here on in, this episode is, I will just straight up say, this is one of my favourite episodes of this show ever. And I feel like it's very much a companion piece to Therapy Patrol, because they're going through a similar... This is like where they were in season 1. You can see why they needed the therapy, and considering everything that's happened since, it's like, okay, yeah, it's time for a break, guys. It's time to take stock and kind of consider where we're all where we all are mentally and emotionally. And this is just one of the things I love about this show, that it keeps doing this. It feels like being in therapy, and it's a therapy that I fucking need. I'm glad I get to spend it with these oddballs. I absolutely love it. As crazy as zany they are, they still seem absolutely human and real. Let's take it piece by piece. So we get Jane and Rita, who are sitting on the sun loungers, I say sitting on the sun loungers. Rita is a blob in a sack. Both literally and figuratively. And so they're discussing how they feel about Niles, but they're also sort of dancing around it. And the dialogue here is so beautifully written. Jane and Rita both convincing themselves that they both feel a very certain way about it. And Rita even closes the conversation by saying, "So it's settled, we're glad he's gone." Yeah. And Jane just goes, "Yep." And it's like, okay, good luck with that.
It's like, and the award for least convincing self-argument goes to those guys.
But it's beautiful stuff, and I know we kiss the arses of this cast a lot. We have done it a lot in our previous Doom Patrol coverage.
Spoiler alert, guys, we're going to continue to do so.
We're going to keep doing that. And it's so great that this cast have such great chemistry with each other, like on an individual basis. So you can take any two members of this cast and just, section them off for their own little private scene, like we get with Jane and Rita here, and they're just great. Like, both Diane Guerrero and April Bowlby are just so good together and so good in themselves that, one of them is a blob in a fucking sack. And, we know all the crazy stuff about these characters, but what the conversation they are having here is 100% a truthful human conversation that anybody who's been in a similar scenario will be able to relate to. I mean, a similar scenario psychologically, not literally.
April Bowlby's voice acting is amazing. Yeah. Everyone in this show is apparently just like a totally incredible voice actor as well.
Yeah.
My favourite moment of the resort, I may be jumping ahead here, but my favourite moment in this entire resort, up to a point, you'll know the point I mean when we get to it, but up to that point is Cliff in the sauna. Fully dressed with the towel.
Yes, that's fantastic. Like, why is a robot in a sauna? B, why is he wearing his clothes and a towel?
I was in stitches watching that. I missed so much of what was going on because I was fucking crying with laughter.
The chemistry between him and Gargoyles as well is so good. I wrote in my notes Garg Bundy because Gargoyles was giving me big Al Bundy energy.
Fucking Niles Caulder.
Yeah, and that's like the kind of thing we've seen in so many comedy movies where two characters, and they play it for all it's worth. Like the two of them suddenly jerk up and look at each other in that sort of slapstick way.
It was pure stepbrother. It's like, wait, did we just become best friends? Kind of
yes, it's like, Niles Caulder, that fucking guy. But that's how great this show is. It can even do these wee cheap things that quite often in a lesser work you're just like, okay, really pulling that trope out. But somehow in Doom Patrol it's like, no, you've earned it. It works. Prior to that, incidentally, we get the conversation between Vic and Cliff, where they're at that structure called the backbone, which I think is quite. I like the symbolism there.
Which caused Nixon to quit.
Yes. But I like the choice, both visually and the name, because first, I mean, there's the whole thing, obviously, about facing up and finding a backbone, but it's also the fact Cliff's neurological issues, the fact that the backbone is connected, is what connects the nervous system.
I thought you were going to sing a song there.
There's some. Maybe for the extended version for the Patreon, we don't have one. Yeah. But yeah, that was all nice imagery. But the banter and the ribbing going on between Vic and Cliff here, delicious. Vic taking the piss out of Cliff for like, oh, you're not facing up to reality, you need to get it together, and then Cliff coming back with, oh, look who's talking, you did all that because you love her. Yeah, it's like, no, I just wanted to help her because you love her.
I love every second of Steel and Stone when they're together.
She's a good person and you love her. It's great shit.
Oh, we've kind of forgot to mention as well that not only has Larry lost his powers, Cliff is obviously malfunctioning left, right and centre. Rita is a sack who can't pull her shit together, but also Vic has been decommissioned pretty much by
he's been depowered.
Yeah, Silas has decommissioned him because of him letting Ronnie away. Yeah, so yeah, I wrote in my notes, Vic is back in the Silas doghouse. And they did have that moment in the first episode of the season where it seemed like they were pals briefly, and I did actually make a note going, that's not going to last.
No.
And sure enough, very next episode. Let's talk about we mentioned it already, but let's just visit that dinner scene where the Doom Patrol are really getting on each other's last nerve. and Gargoax and Samuelson enter, complete with announcement. And Vic is immediately on edge, thinking, okay, that guy is plainly a supervillain. And the other's just going, well, Jane and Rita is just saying,
we're on holiday.
I'm sure it's fine. But Cliff actually saying, no, I know that guy, that's Garg. What's up, Garg?
Yeah, Vic is protesting too much at this point because, you know, you can tell his insecurities are just like, look, there's a supervillain, we're a super team, we need to show ourselves to be the good guys, and Jane's like, not a fucking super team.
Yeah, and it's a lot of the energy for this, of course, is the coming out from the resentment about Niles, and so it's still really working that furrow, you know. And I think Cliff actually says, you know, we're not Niles Caulder's toys anymore, he's gone. Yeah, everything is just so complete thematically.
There's also, for me, there was an incredible energy of like a game of Dungeons and Dragons.
First of all, gay. Second of all, stupid.
There have been so many moments in games of D&D where like the party of characters encounters the bad guy, and like the reactions to like someone's like, we should attack him, and I'll be like, because the fuck, he's not done anything to us yet, kind of thing, when it's obviously a bad guy and someone's trying to be nice. I had big D&D party meeting the villain energy and just like the game falling apart immediately.
Vic going up and approaching Gargoax, I love this shit.
Straight out of a prison like cafeteria or like mess hall scene in it.
But quickly,
like,
just quickly deflates. Vic thinking he's the big man, and I love that it's Samuelson that takes him down.
What is his system again? Oh.
Cyborg on our planet, that
fucker.
name means fish fucker.
Again, rolling the R's, just like fish fucker. So good.
And Vic actually eventually sort of clamped, doesn't know how to respond, and then just walks away, and he says to the others, we worked it out.
Yes, the very dictionary definition of stunned Adillion.
And then get that sequence of them going off and doing their own things, and Cliff decides to try and conquer the backbone, which of course collapses under his weight. I love the scene with Jane where she tries to cheat the labyrinth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then sits in the middle, and then she's visualising Niles' wheelchair. That also felt like a pure Twin Peaks The Return moment, because it was like there was no context for that whatsoever. I can easily see that there were probably people watching that going, what's Niles' wheelchair doing there? I loved that moment, I really thought it was great, but just the visual symbolism of her looking at the labyrinth and trying to cheat her way to the centre. It's like, yeah, I see what you're doing, show. Nice needle drop as well. It's Valley by Perfume Genius, and it's another thing this show now has in common with Mr. Robot.
It's almost like these shows that we like have a lot in common.
Yeah, who knew? Maybe there's a reason why we like this shit. So later in the lounge, for what I'm calling the eye of the duck of this episode.
Are you going to be okay talking about this?
I'm going to soldier through. So they continue this argument. Vic is not letting this go. I forgot to mention when Vic was out doing his own thing. Vic is now stuck with the old flip phone he used to have in junior high, apparently, because he now can't use the grid. And he's like trying to get in touch with Ronnie, and of course he can't get a signal out here because he's in the arse end of nowhere. So he's feeling pretty at a loss, and so he's like trying to get them all back on this wagon that he wants to go on and say, let's go and sort this obvious supervillain. And the others getting pretty aggressive, it's getting a bit testy, and this is where we get the immortal Cliff Steele line where Vic says, you're not dealing with your problems, you're running away from them, and Cliff says, fuck all the way off, dude. Brendan Fraser's delivery of that line had me in stitches, man. What's interesting though, while they're all kind of falling apart, Rita actually recomposes, which is, I think, is another subtle way this season is kind of hinting at, is that Rita is going to assume more of a leadership role this season. That's my prediction. So she's the one who seems to be first in trying to actually deal with things and solve her own problems. So she reconstitutes, and we get that, and I'm calling it a beautiful moment. This show is ridiculous, but this is a beautiful moment when Gargoax looks through the window in the door and sees Rita and realises, oh, she's here. And the first thing he does is go back and says, no, we're leaving, we're not doing this. And it's like, oh, good on you, Garg.
Yes, good.
Why is that moment so emotionally affecting? Like a green guy who's like the eater of worlds,
who we only met at the start of this episode.
Yeah, this show makes you like invested in characters like that so quickly. It's incredible.
The writing is just so great, and the way it's played is just so beautiful. But I've got all the feels for Gargoyles in this moment. Like, Samuelson is trying to be the Jobsworth, saying, "No, we have to complete the mission." And Garg's like, "Let it go. We didn't abandon the mission abandoned us." And I'm like, oh man, that's beautiful.
I also kind of feel for Samuelson, despite him being a horrible bastard, because he's like, he's gone the opposite way from Gargoyles, where he's just like, well, fuck this.
Yeah,
we've
he's
been
become
here
more
this
militant.
fucking long, we're doing it,
And both reactions kind of make sense. Like, you can see how the two different personality types that are at work there, how, it does totally make sense. I know we're talking about aliens, but it's one of those very human moments.
Also, can we just take a moment here to appreciate how good Rita looks with a bag wrapped around her as a makeshift dress?
Yes, yeah.
That was fantastic.
I also loved that she was taking her drink through a straw in the sack. That was brilliant. All right, we have to talk about it.
Yep.
The team are all in a huff with each other. The dance floor's sitting there. We get Forever Young by Alphaville. Jane. I'm going to say, actually, it's not Jane. It's Kay inside Jane. This really made me weep, this whole scene. Kay starts reacting to the music, and so we see Jane get up, and she just starts dancing, and we see Kay dancing. And before we go any further, that bit alone, I was like... To see that wee girl so happy and carefree after everything we know about that character, it's like, my heart, what are you doing to my heart, Doom Patrol? And then gradually, all the characters get up and dance with her, including Vic, and they're all pals again in that moment. We have to make special mention of the song, because first of all, that song is a timeless fucking song. It's a perfect melancholy pop song. It's lyrically, legitimately profound about, being young and thinking about mortality and oh god, everything about this scene is so goddamn perfect. And the intercutting of Kay dancing, oh god damn it, man.
It's one of those rare moments that you don't get in many TV shows. It wouldn't work in many TV shows, and you spring a scene like this in Doom Patrol, and it feels so earned. Yeah,
100% earned. And honestly, more than any other show I can think of, maybe Mr. Robot is on a par with this, actually. You feel the psychological journey that the character has been through. Like, you really feel it episode to episode.
Yep.
And this ridiculous show, one of the things that's always been present is that investigation of trauma. And that's why these episodes like this in Therapy Patrol are so important. And I'm just so appreciative that the makers of this show keep doing this. They take the time to have these moments. They recognise that these moments are absolutely integral to the story they're telling. And it's so rewarding when you get a scene like this. It just makes it, I don't mean to say it makes it all worth it, because it's all great, but it's moments like this where you really get to appreciate properly just how meaningful the story is that the storytellers are giving you, on the surface it's all crazy and zany, but at its core there is something very human and very profound. But man, this whole scene, obviously people have uploaded it to YouTube now. I've watched it so many more times. They're like, oh, it's so fucking beautiful. Everything about it is absolutely beautiful. Christopher Manley deserves all the directing awards for this sequence alone, and whoever the choreographer was, fucking top marks, because the whole thing was just chef's kiss. Also, Diane Guerrero pulling some sick shapes, man.
As if she wasn't perfect enough already.
Aye.
Yeah,
it's like,
for sure.
Fucking hell, man. Dial it down a bit. Like, all the talents.
Our unproblematic fave.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh.
If only this feeling could last forever.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and in true Doom Patrol style, it all goes to shit moments later, because the signal comes, finally, from the Brotherhood of Evil. And Samuelson decides to take charge, and that's where we get, again, I'm calling it a beautiful moment, where Garg, we're on nickname terms, he essentially sacrifices himself. What a great complete arc this character has in this episode. It's just brilliant.
There was a flash of a second, right? And I think obviously this is what they were going for, and they fucking got me with it when the door bursts open and Garg comes in, and I was like, no, he's changed his tune because of the signal, and then you're like, oh no, he's not.
Yeah, run. Yeah, beautiful. And we fucking Samuelson there. I'm going to terminate the lot of ye. Rolling those R's all the way into next week, as they would say in the pages of the Beano.
And he just fucking kills them all.
Yeah, TLDR, the Doom Patrol die right here.
He kills 3 of them, and then Rita almost escapes, but
Yeah, and the route is blocked off by whom? Rita? ?
WTF?
Well, I don't think there's much of a mystery to that one.
Yeah. Rita dressed exactly like Madame Rouge, the
Right,
shapeshifter.
yeah. We couldn't get Michelle Gomez to this location for this episode, so we just showed her only as April Bowlby.
Maybe her and Billy Boyd, if they're falling out, they can't be in the same place at the same time. Someone ate the last totty scone.
There's already one overly Scottish person in this scene. We can't have one more, it's too much.
If you got them in, there would be a drunken brawl. Only takes 2 Scottish people to ruin something.
It would be like Paisley Road West in the day of an old firm match. These are references for a very specific audience out there.
Also, there is no old firm anymore, so that's very specific now.
I'm quite enjoying what they're doing here. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with it, but it almost seems like Madame Rouge has no real control over her shape-shifting, unless she deliberately meant to appear as Rita here. I mean, that could be the case, but certainly we saw it in the first episode where she seemed to transform into Rita's nemesis by accident.
I think it's probably more, it's just continuing the theme of everybody's powers being fucked up, like, not only the heroes, but also the villain.
Aye. Because even Mr. Nobody, when you think about it, as powerful as he was still a fucking goofball when it came to controlling his powers, yeah. So yeah, it does sort of make sense as a running theme.
Yeah.
I hope we see him again at some point.
It's fucking amazing.
I just want a little cameo, and that's
that billboard in season 2 is one of my favourite touches.
Yeah. My side.
Denise. I did actually notice when I was rewatching season 2, I'd completely forgotten about it, but in the following episode, it's one of Jane's personas anyway says to Jane in the underground, have you seen Scarlet Harlot? She was meant to be part of our reading group. We're all meant to be reading that dinosaur memoir. There's wee touches like that make this show just absolutely fantastic.
But yeah, we come to Doom Patrol, with the exception of Larry, all lying dead.
Yeah, what an ending.
What will happen? We'll find out in the very next episode. But I've already said it, so I'm going to say it again. I rate Doom Patrol Season 3, Episode 2, Vacay Patrol, 9 5s out of 9. Because, oh my, what a joyful episode that was.
Well, to the shock of absolutely nobody, I'm sure, from what I've already said about this episode, I am also scoring this 9 5s out of 9. This is genuinely one of my favourite episodes of this show so far. It was everything I love about it. You know, honestly, you could take that Forever Young scene alone and that would have been perfect, yep. But everything around it was also perfect. The sub-therapy patrol episodes are like one of my favourite things this show does, and everything about this was perfect. And it was perfectly placed in the season.
Alan?
2 thumbs fresh. I absolutely loved it. It's up there with some of that fine TV that we like to talk about. So, yeah, can't say more good things about it.
Excellent. Well, we're off to a strong start.
Well played, Doom Patrol.
Okay, before we dive into the third episode, shall we take another quick wee bar break here?
Let's
reconvene.
We'll be right back after these important messages. These wee East Coast IPAs are going down a treat.
Well, this wine is hitting the spot, as it always does. Right, before we dive into this third and final episode of Doom Patrol and our coverage here, another thing we do talk about from time to time on this podcast that has been known is music. You been listening to anything good lately, guys?
I not only streamed but purchased, like a cool guy, the new Moor Mother album, Black Encyclopedia of the Air. It's yeah.
Wait, James. Is this an episode of fHipHopriety, the podcast in which we discuss all things hip-hop and related rap music genres?
You know something? I think it might be, Craig.
Cue the music. Hello and welcome to another edition of fHipHopriety, the podcast in which we do the thing that was just mentioned. Yep. James, you were talking about the new Moor Mother album.
Yes, it's great.
It is fantastic. Moor Mother can do no wrong. She keeps churning out great content. She also has a new album coming out later this year with her jazz band Irreversible Entanglements. Probably, and I think I've said this in the podcast before, probably the most relevant artist of the 21st century. I know that sounds like a bold fucking claim, but I don't do things by half on this podcast.
She is the GOAT, for sure, the GOAT. She is the space age jazz queen from the future that we need.
Yeah, 100%. That post-apocalyptic seer that we all wanted and didn't know we wanted. In equal parts, beautiful and terrifying. And all of her work is just so deep and profound and so rewarding. Some good guests on this album as well. Pink Sifu is on there, whose work I really enjoy. He released a great album earlier this year as well, so that's another one for the fHipHopriety. Another album I've been listening to recently is the new Neo album. James, Alan, is this an episode of fSobrieTV inside an episode of fHipHopriety?
You know what, Craig? I think it may be.
Cue the music. Hello and welcome to fSobrnB, the podcast that I just said we were doing. Right. Anyway, the new album by Neo, who is a British neo-soul singer, is titled "And Then Life Was Beautiful." Was just released at the time of recording. Was just released last week. You will really dig it, James. It's all the things that you love about R&B. It's very, very 90s neo-soul. And I know that you liked her first album. The title, which escapes me currently.
The title also escapes me, which means it's one of Alan's favourites. Yeah, it was incredible. She is such a good artist.
Her second album was called Saturn. It was released a couple of years ago, and I liked it but didn't like it as much. But this new one really has blown me away. I think it's really beautiful. Her voice is so distinctive. She's got one of those unmistakable voices. You know when you're listening to Neo. But yeah, you'll really love it. Get it in your ears. It's so soulful and it's a real salve. I was just thinking there, I remember you for some reason couldn't come to the gig, but I remember when
it was
Neil...
the art school, right?
It was. Neil played the art school in Glasgow in 2016 when she toured that first album. And this is how much things can change in 5 short years. Because I remember that her support act was Georgia Smith. And Georgia Smith was like an 18-year-old nobody at that time. And now she's an absolute superstar, and there's no way she'd be supporting Neo now, and that's no disrespect to Neo, but Georgia Smith she deserves to be a superstar. I fucking love Georgia Smith, you know that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we both do. Remember we went to see
her.
Georgia Smith?
Yeah.
That was a good day.
I hadn't even heard her, and you were like, I think you'll like this, come to this gig, and I was like, Mister, you're correct, sir. That's fucking amazing.
But yeah, it's so funny, like a year after that Neo gig, Georgia Smith's career just started to skyrocket, and suddenly she was like on the Black Panther soundtrack and stuff. I was like, holy shit. But it's so funny, when I saw her that supporting Neo at the art school, she was just a teenage girl that nobody had heard of, and then this supernaturally exquisite voice just came out of her, and I just remember it was one of those whoa moments where the whole audience was just like, holy shit, she is amazing. And yeah, sure enough, a year later she was on her way to superstardom. So yeah, fun story. But anyway, Neo's new album is great. The end.
Next one.
Also, I want to mention another artist called Rimon, who I've really dug for the past couple of years. She's based in the Netherlands. She's actually from Eritrea originally. Rimon is spelled Rimon. You'll really dig her as well, James. Alan, you've actually heard her before, because I remember when I first moved into this flat and was fucking around on my big telly with YouTube, as I put on a few of her videos. But by all means, I can refresh your memory. But she's an incredibly talented artist, and her new EP is called Digital Tears, and it's like 6 songs, and it packs so much content in its 6 songs. It's like an album's worth of exquisiteness. So yeah, get it in your lugs.
My lugs will be filled.
Excellent, and I think that maybe wraps it up for another episode of fSobrnB.
Toodle pip.
Toodle pip.
Good ep.
Good ep, and since we're still here, I suppose this also wraps it up for another episode of fHipHopriety.
Toodle pip.
Toodle pip.
Toodle pip.
Good eps.
Good eps. Those guys sure know about new and current hip hop and R&B music.
Alright, so shall we dive into Doom Patrol Season 3, Episode 3, Dead Patrol.
Let's.
Yep, or as I like to call it, Dead Boy Detective Agency, the pilot episode.
The backdoor pilot. Alright, it was directed by Christopher Manley again. Second consecutive episode directed by our man, Christopher Manley. It was written by Jeremy Carver and Steve Yockey. The fact that it was written by Jeremy Carver, now that you've pointed out, James, that he is going to be one of the showrunners on that Dead Boy Detective series, okay, it does make sense now that, yeah, he was clearly using this as a testing ground for these characters. I will say more about this in just a moment, but let's go through the episode.
Well, before we begin, I'll get this out of the way just now so I'm not clogging up the episode later. Genuinely, like, after these characters had been in it for a little while, my first thought was, is this a parody of a Neil Gaiman set of characters? Mm-hmm. And then I was like, wait, is this a pilot for these guys to have their own TV show? And then I looked up, I was like, oh, Neil Gaiman created them, and it's HBO Max is putting a pilot in for them. So yeah, it is exactly that, which is understandable because, I mean, Doom Patrol started as a backdoor pilot from Titans, so
true. Yep.
I guess
so
they
do have
nowadays.
previous. Yeah, they do have previous for this. It kind of makes sense, but yeah, the characters themselves, they did first appear in Neil Gaiman's The Sandman, I think about 1992. So yeah, and I knew they rung a bell when they appeared in this, but I couldn't think what. I wasn't sure whether it was from Doom Patrol or not. And then when I looked it up, I was like, oh yeah, of course, it's got Gaiman written all over it.
Yep.
Yeah, more to say about this down the line, but yeah, let's go through the episode. We get the harrow. I'm laughing because I'm laughing. I'm trying to defend myself against the pain, but Larry is receiving the corpses of the Doom Patrol in the crates. Yep. This is one of the most harrowing sequences this fucking show has ever given us, and that's saying something.
Just uncovering the packing noodles and oh my god.
And thinking that Rita's hair is yarn. Yeah, this was really disturbing.
Yeah.
Poor Larry, give the guy a fucking break, man.
He has had a shite time this season already.
He's barely left the fucking manor. I mean, he went up to space, sure, but since he came back, everything's been utter shite. It's like, Christ, man, he doesn't even have his pal inside him anymore. And I don't mean that in a sexual way. Get your minds out the gutter, listeners. So, yeah, by the way, I will say, these corpses look fucking horrible.
Yeah.
Yep.
All the rubbery face with the veins, I don't like it. It upset me. I didn't like it.
No, it's too much.
But Larry's a man in serious pain. And things only get worse when Dorothy arrives, and then we feel her grief as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, well, more to say about that in a moment, but let's catch up with the actual Doom Patrol, well, the rest of them, who currently are crossing the River Styx, apparently. The ferryman who Diane Guerrero refers to as a Jawa. Said, how about we just rush the Jawa? I'll start this here. This scene here, I don't dislike the scene, right? But this was the first scene where I was thinking to myself, we've seen this kind of reference to the River Styx so many times, and it seems like the kind of thing a lesser show would do. And I don't feel like this show very often rests on just recreating tropes that we've seen a million other places. You know what I mean? It usually has an original spin on them, and there is no original spin on it here. And I was a wee bit disappointed by that. I was like, I don't know that I needed this imagery from Doom Patrol. It felt a wee bit flat, and it's not the last time I'll feel that there's something flat about this episode. So yeah, that was sort of the preempt for me to think that maybe this might not be my favourite episode. But yeah, we get the idea. Okay, they're dead and they're crossing over to the land of the dead. I will say I do like the design of the guys on the other shore to greet them, who have these sort of anglerfish heads, which Cliff describes later as being glow-in-the-dark testicle guys. And there was something kind of nice about the way they're sort of processed on meat hooks. I guess that was a nice twist. I sort of liked that. But okay, here's where I'm coming from with where this episode's concerned. Early on, I was like, this feels like an episode of Buffy. I feel like I've seen this kind of thing on a more... I am not shading Buffy.
Wait a minute, hold on. Is this an episode of fSobriety?
Oh, believe me, if that was a thing, James would have done it by now.
Yep.
Buffy is a show very much of its time, is all I'm saying. And this felt like a trope from a show from like the 90s. Or indeed from Supernatural, which of course was a show that Jeremy Carver cut his teeth on.
big supernatural vibes.
Yeah. I feel like I've seen this trope so many times, and I remember thinking to myself, okay, we're going to get an episode where the characters are going to be quote-unquote dead for the episode, but by the end of the episode, they'll be alive again. And we're going to, in the meantime, get a lot of afterlife-type imagery that we've seen a million times before. And that's pretty much what we got for this episode. And for that reason, it's really not my favourite episode. Does not mean I hated the episode. In fact, all will be made clear when I give my score at the end. But I can't lie and say I was a wee bit disappointed with where things went in this episode, because I kind of predicted where it went, and I don't say that about Doom Patrol very often.
Mm-hmm. I did not predict that Larry would attempt to preserve the bodies.
No, okay, that's fair. That's fair. I definitely did not predict that either.
The fact that Dorothy's like, fucking camped in a bit, you know.
One of my favourite exchanges in this episode.
Why did you arrange your friends around
Larry,
the table?
Yeah, why have you arranged their dead friends around the dining room table? To which Larry replies, leave them in the crates was weird and morbid. My favourite part though is him manipulating Jane's hand to flip the board.
Yes.
Because, how about that? Classic Jane, am I right? So Dorothy has the idea to contact Danny the ambulance for some help here, and it's Danny the ambulance who puts him in contact with the dead boy detectives and their living pal, Crystal. I note that Crystal, her full name is Crystal Palace, which I guess is kind of fun.
It's a British joke for you American listeners.
So the dead boy detectives, their names are Charles and Edwin, not to be confused with Charles and Eddie. But would Charles and Edwin lie to you, baby? Not about the afterlife.
Oh, yeah.
Guess a needle drop. Alright, so let's talk about Charles and Edwin then. I didn't hate these characters. I didn't dislike them. The characters are actually likeable, but I wanted them to be funnier than they were, and I actually felt the writing here was very flat where these characters were concerned. Again, it felt like a different show. It didn't feel like Doom Patrol when these characters were on screen.
Yeah, that was what was giving me the big backdoor pilot kind of vibes as soon as I was watching it, before I knew anything about it. They did seem very much like characters from a different show transplanted into Doom Patrol.
Right.
And it didn't quite work for me. Like I say, they're likeable, and I'm sure in their own stories or in their own show, they might be great. I don't know if it's the same actors. I think I read that the parts haven't been cast yet.
Aye, I read that today as well.
What was there not like the same thing with Doom Patrol and the Titans, where some of the some of the actors were different?
A couple of characters were recast. Yeah. Niles was recast because obviously you're going to get Timothy Dalton.
When one can get Timothy Dalton, one gets Timothy Dalton, obviously.
Yeah. Absolutely. If in doubt, get Timothy Dalton. Timothy Doughton.
Yeah. I'm here, you bloody bastards.
I would love it if that's how he just enters every fucking room all the time.
In my headcanon, that's how it goes. Even in his own house,
yes.
He kicks the door
toilet, everything.
If anybody's in there, freeze, you bloody bastard. Said, Tim, it's been 40 years, why do you keep saying that? But yeah, I just really wanted these guys to be funnier. I just thought the writing was a bit... There wasn't enough humour in the writing, and one thing this show usually does superbly well is no matter what else it's doing, is it always has time for the dialogue to be fucking funny. And the dialogue between these two characters just wasn't that great, I didn't think.
I kind of see what they were going for, the kind of the British kind of fucking just...
You've preempted me slightly, Alan, because I was going to say one of the things that I think was maybe happening here was I think there is that cultural thing in the States where they just automatically find Southern English accents automatically hilarious in a kitsch way.
Yeah.
And so they were just letting that do the work. It's like, if we just have two English guys on screen, people will think it's hilarious, so we don't need to write jokes. I kind of think maybe there was a wee bit of that going on.
Why has he got a baseball bat? Because it's the States.
Right, he's an English guy with a baseball bat, crazy. It's like, okay, this isn't the best writing you've ever done. And I think to our eyes watching that, it's a bit like, I don't think this is working for me.
For me, they come from one of my favourite stories in Sandman. So favourite that I got part of it tattooed onto my body. That's how much I fucking love the story that they come from. And the second that they appeared, I was like, holy fucking shit. Because I had no idea that these characters were in Doom Patrol, never mind getting their own TV series, which I've only just found out in the last couple of minutes. So I was quite excited for that. But the second that the second they appeared, I was like, oh fucking shit, it's the Dead Boy Detectives, nice. But I only really read that original story with them. I never read any of the stuff that kind of came later, so I don't know if Crystal is like something that comes from the comics or whether she's an original character or not. Like, I've no idea on that.
I tried looking that up and I couldn't. My search was inconclusive, so I've got a feeling maybe that she's an invention of the show. Ironically, she was my favourite of the three.
Yeah, I definitely.
And I liked her relationship with Dorothy when they were having their wee chat later. I actually really enjoyed that stuff. But to reiterate, I didn't dislike the Dead Boy Detectives. The two characters are likeable enough. I thought the two actors did a good job. But yeah, the writing was definitely way flatter than I expect from this show.
Yeah.
I kind of think the repetition of the phrase "mind your business" was supposed to be funny, but it definitely wasn't, because I don't understand how that's a joke. But okay, whatever. Yeah, I mean, it's fine. I just want to make sure I'm clear. I didn't dislike it. I just didn't love it. And I'm so used to loving everything in this show that it was just a bit...
We just spoke about the Devourer of Worlds a minute ago, who is introduced and killed off in one episode, and we fucking loved that guy. Like, we fucking loved that guy. And it's like, Monsieur Mullah in the Brain appeared for a minute. Fucking loved him, like absolutely loved him, but the Dead Boy Detectives got a lot of kind of airtime considering, and didn't quite hit the mark, but not bad, as you say.
Yeah, it didn't have anything like the same impact.
Yeah.
No, definitely not bad, but it felt like competent writing if this was a more generic show, which it isn't usually.
Like, this would be a fantastic episode of a lesser TV show, but it's a mediocre episode of a fantastic TV show, so...
You can tell what a big deal it is for this show to have a less than great episode, because we've just spent about 5 minutes talking about the fact that, it's a bit disappointing this was only a good episode.
And also, like, don't get us wrong, don't get us wrong, we're not saying it's bad, but...
Yeah. I also got written in my notes that Charles has got some big English Steve from Stranger Things energy, and I'm thinking maybe that was deliberate. Right down to the wavy hair.
If he is as funny as Steve from Stranger Things in the actual TV show, though, I'll probably watch it.
Yeah, although not Steve from season 3 of Stranger Things, because who the fuck was that Steve? I did not recognise that guy.
I don't even acknowledge that season.
I recognised the part in the first episode where Max and Elle go shopping together, because that was literally my favourite thing in the whole season. Because I was like, oh cool, they're pals now, because it pissed me off in season 2 where they were like at odds with each other. It's like, oh really, the guys can be pals but the two girls can't get on? Fuck off. So it's kind of cool they got to be pals.
That was a bit of a duff manoeuvre.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it was certainly duffer than the previous 2 seasons. Moving on. That's the end of the Stranger Things rant. That's been an episode of fSobriety something.
Good ep.
I don't think it was good as the first 2 eps, to be fair, but you know, that's a podcast that's rapidly going downhill.
So this chat between Crystal and Dorothy, since I mentioned it, I'll just follow it up here. Crystal has this backstory with a demon called David, apparently. And I'm thinking, are they doing that for the benefit of Doom Patrol? Is this going to come back in this show, or is this for the backdoor pilot for the Dead Boy Detectives? Because I quite like Crystal, she seems quite interesting, so... and Dorothy clearly gets on with her. And basically what I'm getting at is I don't want Dorothy to have exited the show, but I get the sense that maybe she's going to be shipped off to this other show, but I don't know, it's just a feeling I have. What do you think?
Could be, I never thought of it before, but now that you say it, she's kind of taken up a season and a half so far of Doom Patrol. I don't mean taken up, but it's kind of taking the spotlight away from Cliff, Rita and the rest, so I could be.
I think it's either that or they just need an excuse for her not to be there for a few episodes. So
yeah, and this just seems like an artful way of doing it. Yeah, I guess I can see that. There's some really nice touches in that dialogue between the two of them, with the fact that Dorothy tries to sneak in the chocolate with the other objects of the characters that they're trying to retrieve from the afterlife, and as a bid to try and get Niles back. I really enjoyed that. I just thought it was so sweet the way she snuck it onto the table. And then Crystal tried to say to her, okay, no bullshit, and then they have that no bullshit convo. I really liked that. I thought those two characters had the nice chemistry in the ways that I just felt that, you know, Charles and Edwin just wasn't quite there as much for me. So the other thing that is a bit disappointing for me about this episode, and I already hinted to it about talking about the imagery of this in this episode, I feel like the afterlives that we see of each of the characters, with the exception of one, and I know you guys can predict which one I liked, but the afterlives we're given I thought were very generic. Like, I thought Cliff's afterlife was so predictable. I thought Vic's afterlife was so predictable. There was nothing particularly left field about any of it, and I was just like...
from You were loving the abuela.
Of course I was loving the abuela. I was all about abuelita. I absolutely loved all of that shit. And I thought, there was actually some profound dialogue between Jane and the other Jane, as it turns out. Like, one of probably my favourite moment of the episode was when Jane says, "You need to know that he doesn't hurt her anymore." And I was like, oh. But yeah, that was the one I liked. I thought the other two were fine. Like, Cliff's was particularly, it was okay.
The fact that we got his dad back was like quite good because I love that actor. Like,
Correctional Officer Sam Healy.
Yes.
Yeah, it's good. It's nice seeing how Cliff's getting over some of his trauma from earlier in his life. But again, you're right. It was all very like supernatural.
Yeah.
Jeremy Carver was showing his ass a little.
It's exactly the kind of thing that I feel like I would be able to predict coming from any kind of genre show, and that's not something I ever say about Doom Patrol. And so I'm just like, I feel you shortchanged me here, Carver and Co.
I feel like it's because, right, if this had shown up in any other show, it would have been a really weird episode. And people would have
guess
talked
that's
about, like,
true.
"Oh, do you see that was so mad, wasn't it? Where they had all the weird afterlife stuff and the meat hooks and the detective guys, and one of them was or they were ghosts or something." And then, whereas in Doom Patrol, you're like, "Oh, this episode's a bit boring compared to all the other mad stuff that usually happens."
Basic
true.
as fuck.
I guess we've been spoiled. This show has spoiled us.
With this madcap television show, you were really spoiling us.
Excellent.
We're just whining like a bunch of spoiled little bitches. But even down to Correctional Officer Sam Healy shooting the Pegasuses. I mean, it was kind of funny, and Cliff's reaction was funny, but also predictable. It was just that's the balance that I was getting from this whole episode. It was just like, okay, it's kind of like, this is the kind of thing I would expect if they did a Doom Patrol promo, and this was a sketch that they did to promote the show. You know what I mean? Rather than it actually being part of the episode. Which is to say, it's fine, it's entertaining enough, but it's hashtag not my Doom Patrol.
Correctional Officer Cliff's dad, though, talking about having a relationship with his granddaughter, but I quite like that as well. Like, Cliff was just like, "Are you fucking shitting me, man? Like, what? Like, you were fucking nothing to me, and you're part of my daughter's life."
Despite any misgivings I have, like, certainly the dialogue between the characters in the afterlives was 100% in keeping with the themes we've been discussing. In fact, James, you and I had a big chat in our Season 2 discussion about how there was this overarching theme about trauma being passed down from parents to their children. And certainly that confrontation, all the confrontations of the afterlife they give are still, going on that similar vein. And so the fact that Cliff gets to actually say to his dad the things he didn't get to say to him while he was alive, there is something quite powerful about that. I guess all I'm whining like a little bitch about is that I feel like the staging could have been more interesting. And the same is true of the Vic stuff with his mother. That was the weakest one in my view. I feel like that one, you could have taken that one out and it wouldn't even have added very much, in all honesty. I mean, Vic, we don't learn anything particularly really about Vic in this scene. We already knew how he felt about his mother. I guess what we're getting is the autonomy of Vic's mother and her being able to say to him from beyond the grave, "Your father did a bad thing by being obsessed by turning you into a hero," which I guess is a perspective we didn't hear from her before. So I guess we learned that, and then obviously Vic's reaction to that is going to have some effects as to how he deals with his own shit further down the line.
Why do you think it's going to be more important later in the show, but do you think there was a specific writing reason why Rita was aware of the whole thing and we didn't see Rita's purgatory? Or do you think it's because we've seen a lot of that already? Like, we would have known what it was?
Maybe a bit of both. We have seen it's true, we have seen some grotty details with Rita, but I think, going back to my earlier theory that Rita's going to take more of a sort of leadership role this season, I think she had to be more awake here, because she had to be the one, albeit she ends up not actually being that instrumental in saving them. But the idea
classic Rita, though.
Right, aye. But the idea that she's awake, she's conscious, I think in itself is sort of indicative maybe of where the show is going to take her character this season.
You've got the elephant man looking dude who kind of helps them out.
I called him Mr. Melty Man.
Mr. Melty Man, who clearly knows Rita, but Rita is either kidding on, she doesn't know him, or doesn't remember him or whatever.
Yeah, so that's definitely
I think
unclear.
That's tying into the fact that you don't see much of what happened with her, because I think that guy is going to become important further down the line. I think that's part of the reason why she's awake for it, and every day she sees them in their afterlife. I think there's something there. We'll get a flashback.
I think that's a good call. Yeah, I think that's a good
definitely
call.
a good shout.
Yeah. So meanwhile, the dead boy detectives are going to go into the afterlife after some cajoling. And what convinces them is because Crystal becomes convinced, because clearly there's some part of Crystal that associates, she relates to Dorothy's story, and so the dead boys decide, okay, they're going to go out the afterlife, and they're going to bring Larry along. And the method by which they bring Larry along, I did enjoy. When they get him to look at that wallpaper,
Yeah.
just concentrate, you'll see something. That'll be your key to the afterlife. And Larry goes, oh yeah, it's a rocket, and then it just bonks him on the head. Classic Larry, it's a rocket.
Yeah.
They go to what I described as a Tim Burton forest, the Tim Burton pain tree, which, it was fine. But again, that's what I would expect from a Tim Burton movie and not necessarily from Doom Patrol.
I'm just missing Danny DeVito in his 8-foot tall top hat, right? Like this.
I have to say though, in all honesty, when we got that really quick flashback to what happened to Edwin, I did find that really fucking disturbing. Because just the way that was shot was really horrible.
It was pretty grim, but I was also expecting more.
Same, but I guess they're saving it in the bag for their show.
Their origin, like from the Sandman story, was horrific. Like it's really fucking bad.
I figured as much.
Aye. So I'm kind of glad we didn't get to see more of that because not nice.
Doesn't involve stigmata, doesn't.
It does not. Like
We learned that death is after. Was it Edwin?
Yep, there's a literal
Yep.
death and it's a woman.
this got me excited. I was like, is this going to tie into the fucking Sandman like Netflix show? Like, oh my god! Like,
Yeah. No, they're definitely saving the big gaming guns for that
Yeah.
show.
Yeah.
But it was I guess it was kind of cool they mentioned it though. So that happened. One moment I did really enjoy, where Charles and Edwin are concerned, was that wee moment between Larry and Edwin, where Larry recognises that Edwin has feelings for Charles, and tries to say to him, look, don't waste time with this. Just do it. You know, it's not 1916 anymore. I actually really liked that wee moment. It was a nice Larry moment, and it was totally of a keeping with his moment with Dorothy in the first episode.
It's like what I was referring to then. It's like when Larry does a little connect, it's just like, it's really affecting.
Alright, so they make their way into the meat processing factory. So the other Doom Patrol characters all gradually wake up from their afterlives after being spurred on by their significant whoever they meet there. So they're all conscious again. And Cliff has a great moment here where he says, I'm going to be the best goddamn dad and the best goddamn grandfather so I can fuck my own father right in the forehead. Smashes his way through the roof, and you get the music builds with the theme, and then suddenly cuts off. I was actually surprised they didn't put a record scratch in, because that's all that was missing. When he looks up and it's the fucking, as he says, the glowing testicle guy is just all hovering over him. So, are you fucking kidding me? They seem to make short work of them nonetheless. Because
We've seen how Cliff deals with bad guys before.
yeah, get a flashback there. Puppet Patrol.
oh man,
Ripping the arms off of a Hitler Youth.
Yeah, beating that guy to death with his own legs is still one of my favourite moments of this show. So meanwhile, Larry and the dead boy detectives roll on in there, and they stumble upon Rita and Melty Man first, and then the rest of the Doom Patrol reconvene, now armed with lanterns, which are in fact the heads of the glowing testicle guys, these anglerfish head guys. And then we get the entrance of this spider-faced woman, who conspicuously also has a Scottish accent.
Scottish accent.
It's like, alright, Doom Patrol, what's happening here?
those evil Scots at it again.
Mick Doom Patrol.
And the actress playing this role, her name is Ruth Connell, and she actually had a major role in Supernatural, so this looks like Jeremy Carver bringing his old pals in for this backdoor pilot here.
Mick Nepotism.
So somebody in the writer's room said, wouldn't it be great if all the villains were Scottish? And Jeremy Carver thought, oh, I know somebody who's Scottish. I'm not racist, I have a Scottish pal, he said.
But which leads me to the thing I was talking to you about during the week, Craig, which is if they're going to just make every villain in this DC show Scottish, it does pave the way for them to bring in Ewan McGregor as the Black Mask.
Yes.
Which opens the door for that Margot Robbie cameo that will never happen, but which I would
Yeah.
absolutely love. Oh, make it happen, please, Santa.
Coked up McGregor.
Let Ewan
Yes.
McGregor do it in his own accent, and
Fuck off!
these are my things!
what? Listen, can we just take a moment to appreciate all the value that our tiny country has given to the world of entertainment? So many great national treasures, and all of them playing ridiculous characters in the DC universe, apparently.
Oh, the Suicide Squad, the Thinker.
Yeah, Peter Capaldi. Yeah, they can't help themselves.
Not only a villain, but a mad pervert as well. Like,
so we get the briefest of quote-unquote battles. It's more of an escape as Spider Lass runs after them. Melty Man gets pushed to the side, but I don't think we've seen the last of that guy, whoever he is. So get back on the ferryman's boat, in which this moment here, which I did really appreciate. We think she's going to be spewing some kind of acid.
Yep.
it's just vomit.
It's Ria's delivery of "it's just vomit."
I rewound it like 3 times. I was like, "That's fucking brilliant."
And Cliff immediately flipping the double middle fingers after it. And the triumphant music playing. So good. I think it was at that moment I was like, oh, we're back in Doom Patrol.
Yep.
Great shit.
Amazing.
So yeah, the gang reconvene back at Doom Manor. Dorothy goes off with the Dead Kid detectives, possibly into that spin-off show. Possibly never to return. I hope not, because I'm enjoying Dorothy. I think I really love the energy she gives to this show. So who knows, we might see her again, we might not. Same goes for Danny the ambulance, I suppose. And then some beautiful wee character moments here. Again, these beats that the show just always insists on putting in, like we get Rita and Larry reuniting and having their wee moment. It's like, oh, these two. And Jane and Cliff, likewise. And Jane saying, your dad shot a Pegasus. And then the kicker down the stairs into the kitchen, sauntering, quite the thing. Our national treasure, Michelle Gomez, making herself some tea.
As if one Scottish villain per episode wasn't enough.
Jane asked the question on all her lips, who in the sweet mercy of fuck are you? Interesting question, very good question. Who wants some tea? And it's classic Michelle Gomez delivery, and I'm now so excited about what's happening next, because we know it's going to be Michelle Gomez heavy. It's finally going to be Michelle Gomez interacting with all of our favourite cast. I'm so excited. I like the fact her answer to the question, who in the sweet mercy of fuck are you, is interesting question, as if she doesn't know. Because in the comics, Madame Rouge does have a split personality. And there is, in certain eras, there is this idea that the two are not aware of what the other is doing. So there's a bit of a Mr. Robot thing. You'll enjoy that, James. So I don't know whether that's what they were intimating there, or whether, Madame Rouge is just being a widow. I guess either is possible. But yeah, I can't wait to find out. More like Michelle Widomez.
Michelle U. Gomez.
And that is episode 3, Dead Patrol. So all in all, weighing it all up, given everything I've said, I am going to score this episode literally my least favourite episode of Doom Patrol so far. I am scoring it 7 5s out of 9. That is how highly even my least favourite episode of this show still scores, because even when it's not great, it's still kind of great.
I'm slightly below. This is 6.5 5s out of 9 for me, which is still significantly higher than average for what I also think is maybe one of my least favourite episodes, but it's still better than most episodes of most TV shows, so 2 robot middle fingers up, 6.5 5s out of 9.
Alan?
I give it 1 dead Pegasus out of 1 dead Pegasus. For all it was not
alright, you top marks,
ever.
you were all over this episode.
Yeah, I still enjoyed the fuck out of it.
Yep. I don't know about you guys, but I'm sure I will check out the Dead Boy Detectives show.
I will totally watch at least the first episode of that and see how I feel, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I'm all over it, man. I'm so fucking excited
Anything
for it.
that spins out of this show, then absolutely I'm going to watch it, obviously.
Can't wait to see how they cover the origin story. Let's just see how fucking nasty they go with it.
Alright, well, cool. That just about covers all our business here tonight, guys.
That's your fucking Doom Patrol.
For you listeners out there, if you've made it this far, into the afterlife, we thank you for taking the ferryman's boat across the river to join us here. And we will hopefully be a wee bit quicker with the next episode. We apologise for being a bit slow with this, but as we said at the start of the episode here, mitigating external circumstances. We're hopefully getting back in the swing of things, so yeah.
Thank you for sticking with us. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed what you heard, feel free to, tell a friend, tell several friends, tell anyone you know who likes Doom Patrol. If you haven't listened to our previous episodes about Season 1 and Season 2 of Doom Patrol, they are available for free.
Mm-hmm. I'll even link them in the episode description.
If you're listening to us for the first time talking about Doom Patrol, and you happen to be a fan of either Mr. Robot and or Twin Peaks, we've also covered a lot of that. So check it out.
And plenty more to come. So get on board if you fancy any of that.
But we will be back sooner rather than later talking about episodes 4 and 5 of Season 3 of Doom Patrol.
Yeah, I think that's what we're going to do. And that about wraps it up. I think we will let our resident AI, the Hamiltron, give you all the calls to action. But for us here just now...
Oh, was that the time? I need a boost. Sorry, man. Hamiltron.
There's something strange going on between Alan and the Hamiltron. I don't know if you've picked up, James.
Strange energy.
So all that remains now is for me to look at my drink. And guys, you look at your drink.
I'm drinking from a pint glass here, Craig.
How's that squaring up?
It's about 50%. How's your wine looking there?
50%. If only there's another way of saying that. I would say my wine is somewhere in the region of halfway down the vessel in which it is contained.
Now, Craig, for the benefit of both Alan, myself, and the listeners, is there another way you could phrase that?
James, I think there is. I think some layman might say, that's half the bottle. Toodle pip.
Toodle pip.
fSobriety, Episode 25, Doom Patrol, was conceived by Craig Woods, James Hamilton and Alan Todd, edited by James Hamilton, and is a production of Half the Bottle. The theme music is Colossal Estates, by Errors, available on Rock Action Records. The intro to fSobrnB is Complain, by 30 Hz Beats. Join us on our social media pages, on Twitter at fSobrietyCast, on Instagram at fSobriety, on Facebook at facebook.com/fSobrietyPodcast, and search YouTube for fSobriety Podcast. We'd really appreciate if you did the whole liking, subscribing, commenting thing while you're there. And if you don't, fuck all the way off, bro.
Hello and welcome to fSobriety. I am Craig Woods, the procrastinator. Guzzler of Argentina. Fucked it.
Once everyone thaws out from their wax, the Max Welts. I'll start that again in English this time. Hey, the name's Max Welts.
He was my least favourite melody maker writer from the 90s.
Like that particular season where it was Peter Capaldi versus Michelle Rodriguez. I was like,
Michelle Rodriguez?
Fuck, hang on.
What we all drinking, guys?
Well, Craig, after 2 episodes of Dry...
You've moved on to PJ Harvey's next album, To Bring You My Love. No, it was Rid of Me, wasn't it? Oh, I don't know my PJ Harvey discography. I fucked it, James.
Tales from the Shetty. Tales from the Shetty.
Stories from the... I was going to say stories from the Shetty.
I fucked it as well, god damn it.
My good fortune made me remember the album name.
Nice.
What's my favourite PJ Harvey album now? I can't remember the name of it. It's the weird... I was going to say it's the weird one.
Oh yeah, that one.
Let England Shake.
No,
that's one.
Is that Is This Desire?
Oh, Is This Desire. Oh, that's actually a decent album.
Yeah, it's my favourite PJ Harvey album.
Yeah, I think it's my favourite one as well.
It was like, oh, what's my favourite one? Oh, this one. Oh yeah, that's actually good. Like, well done, James.
Yeah. Who's the aunt from Sabrina?
Yeah. What's her name? Right, sorry, back on track here.
Fucking off the rails. So this is all for the credits.
Yep.
Hi, welcome to nope. God, there's so many fucking titles to work with here.
Good eps. Those guys sure know about new and current hip-hop and R&B music.
I'll take your word for it because
seems
you
like
both dropped out for like almost the entirety of it. So I was like sitting looking confused. I don't know if my video is fucking on or not, but I was like, she appeared on the Black Panther. So
I was starting to wonder why you were quiet.
I thought you were just trying to remember who Rimon was.